Chapter 1323. Shen Mingdia's mental nagging made Su Mi Rao feel helpless. She sneered, "Xiao Dai, I know this isn't your real body, but don't think that I can't do anything to you. Once we leave this world, I still have a way to find your real body." "No, this is my real body," Shen Mengdai denied, her colorful eyes filled with unusual determination. "Rao, you can destroy me, but you can't deny my existence. I am a beautiful butterfly." At the end of her words, her eyes drifted, beautiful and sad, but also had the stubbornness of a child. Even Su Mi Rao couldn't bear to kill her because of her color. After all, it was just an insignificant clone. The most important thing now was to continue the wedding and completely tame that Li Qingshan. Thus, while trying to guess the madman's thoughts, she patiently said, "Since you understand that I am the real, main character, then don't be my enemy anymore, all right?" Shen Mengdai suddenly prostrated herself on the ground and sincerely prayed to the heavens, "Great Lord of Dreams, please forgive my ignorance and arrogance. I shouldn't have guessed your impermanence's will." Su Mi Rao was stunned. She had seen many madmen, but she was the only one who was as crazy as Shen Mengdai. Other madmen would die from qi deviation after reaching a certain level of madness. Could it be that she really understood something? She suddenly turned around. "No, I can't be influenced by her." There, Shen Mengdai raised her head and looked behind Su Mi Rao, a strange smile on her face. Li Qingshan was still standing in the same place, motionless. His eyes didn't even move, even when they were fighting. He stared blankly ahead, as if Su Mi Rao was still standing there. At this time, a tall figure quietly appeared behind him. "Rather than letting you become someone else's slave, I might as well kill you myself." Helicoverpa Rosa raised her red lips. She revealed her sharp poisonous fangs and bit his neck, injecting all the poison into his body. Even though she was charmed, she couldn't leave the nine-tailed fox queen, but that didn't stop her from being driven by jealousy. She wanted to fulfill her long-held wish, kill Li Qingshan. Su Mi Rao was both shocked and furious. The threat to her life might cause Li Qingshan to wake up and break free from the charm. Moreover, Li Qingshan must not die because of her. "Yes, Palace Master." Helicoverpa Rosa's eyes were confused. She loosened her mouth and took a few steps back. She couldn't resist her order at all. However, a large amount of poison was still injected into Li Qingshan's body. However, in his state of absent-mindedness, he did not manage to suppress the poison at all. His face immediately turned green and black. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. "This is all you're doing." Su Min Rao turned around and glared at Shen Mengdai. She immediately recalled that Helicoverpa Rosa was lured to Jasper Palace by her. Because of her special relationship with Li Qingshan, Su Min Rao treated Helicoverpa Rosa differently. However, because they had only known each other for a short time, Helicoverpa Rosa could not completely charm her. Who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would occur? Shen Mengdai snickered. "Mi Rao, do you think I don't know that you used Chuolong to deal with me? I've been drifting on the sea all this time. Apart from you, my good sister, who else can understand my weakness so well? Naturally, this debt will be placed on your head. Him being an accomplice is only incidental. Have you been pretending to be crazy all this time?" Su Min Rao shouted. She could not believe that she would be tricked by an illusion. Shen Mengdai blinked innocently. "What do you mean by pretending? This great Uncle Li is an old friend of ours. Even if you're the fated main character, I won't stand on your side." Suddenly, he hooted at the sky, "You trash, idiot and idiot. Kill me if you can." However, she was not talking to anyone, but to the so-called Lord of Dreams. After cursing, she closed her eyes. She looked like she was waiting to be killed. After a while, she opened her left hand. Then opened her right hand. "Ah, I'm fine. I've had enough of you." Su Min Rao trembled with anger. She finally confirmed that she was really crazy. She had been tricked by a madman. She could not tolerate it. If this continued, she felt that her brain would be damaged. Her hand pierced through Shen Mingdia's chest like lightning and grabbed a struggling butterfly. She was about to crush it when she suddenly froze. Su Min Rao slowly turned around and saw a pair of eyes that were burning like fire. Li Qingshan raised his hand and used his innate ability, Ape Demon Absorption. He said, "Fellow cultivator Su, please let go of my friend." From the moment the red thread of yearning broke, a sliver of clarity returned to his mind. The Spider Queen's vicious poison had attacked his heart, triggering the warning signs of the spirit turtle, forcing him to respond instinctively for survival. He recovered some clarity again. He looked calm on the surface, but the fear and anger in his heart could not be described with words. He wasn't afraid of death, but if his mind was controlled and he became a slave puppet, then he would truly be in a state worse than death. He had encountered countless dangers in his life. If it were not for Shen Mengdai, he would have almost died today. Now that he thought about it, from the moment he entered the palace, the nine-tailed fox empress had already begun to deal with him. First, she struck the flood dragon viciously to arouse his joy and lower his guard. In the end, she even used above the 9 heavens to create an opening and invade his mind in one go. His well-tempered steel was almost as soft as a finger, allowing her to do as she pleased. Su Minrao sighed and said softly, "Lang Jun, is it not enough to have me?" If she tried to kill him, Shen Mengdai would definitely die, but that would definitely incur Li Qingshan's wrath. He would completely awaken from his charms and destroy her thousands of years of planning. At least she did not lie about one thing. She had indeed stayed in this world to wait for Li Qingshan. She had even sworn a blood oath of the Nether River for this and obtained many benefits from the monarch. However, if she was willing to obediently follow the arrangements of others, she would not be Su Minrao. From the moment she arrived in the 9 regions, she began to think about how to swallow the bait and spit out the hook. The flood dragon was the tool she had prepared. At the same time, it was also a good toy. In fact, she had already confirmed that Li Qingshan was the person she had been waiting for. The terrifying aura that appeared on the ice sword cliff could be hidden from those great cultivators with shallow knowledge and insufficient cultivation, but it could not be hidden from her. It was also because of the existence of that aura that she had never dared to act rashly. She even wanted to take a chance and find a loophole in the oath. In any case, as long as Li Qingshan did not take the initiative to look for her, even if he was killed or ascended, she would not have violated the oath. After a few more years, she could remove the blood oath of the Nether River and calmly leave this world. However, she never expected that the tool she had prepared back then would become the opportunity for Li Qingshan to come to see her. All the coincidences and fates did not allow her to escape in the end. To be continued, R466. Chapter 1324. Su Minrao's green fox eyes rolled around as she thought to herself, "The monarch is from Tushan clan. She knows the secrets of heaven and is an expert in divination. I'm afraid she has already planned for this. It's fine if she wants to be a concubine, but she still wants to bully me because I'm young and ignorant, trapping me here to suffer. Not to mention that Li Qingshan wants to go above the 9 heavens, it will be extremely difficult. Even if he really becomes a deity or a saint, what good will it do to me? If I'm not careful, I'll be dragged into a great massacre and die. If someone else encountered such a situation, they would be disheartened and simply accept their fate. However, her personality was not so soft, or she wouldn't have set up such an ambush. She gritted her teeth. Since you're pretending to be generous and won't stop me from fighting him, then don't blame me for bullying him because he's young. Don't blame me for spoiling your plan." Therefore, she unleashed her supernatural powers and her charm even more. Her huge 9 tails stretched out from under her dress and stretched out behind her, as if they were surrounding her on a throne. It was even more like a peacock spreading its tail. Spiritual chi surged towards her and converged into a spiritual light that was visible to the naked eye. It was as if even heaven and earth had fallen in love with her. As for the people in the hall, the imperial advisor of the rite was a Taoist cultivator. He still maintained the body of a child. Needless to say, his temperament and cultivation level were both dazzled and out of control. He tossed the tranquility of Taoism to the back of his mind and suddenly felt that if she could look him in the eye, it would be worth it even if he died immediately. Chua Long was already deeply poisoned. He stared at her figure and thought, Mi Rao doesn't really want to marry Li Qingshan. Instead, she wants to deal with Li Qingshan. She has caused me to suffer. Sigh, if she had told me earlier, would I not have helped her? As he thought about it, his mind calmed down and his chi deviation was not as bad. When Li Qingshan heard the word, husband, it was like he was drinking wine, his heart fluttered and he regained some of his consciousness. He was intoxicated again and tried his best to keep his mind clear. This was the first time in his life that he had seen such a powerful bewitching technique. In the past, he had been tied up by the red thread of yearning, but he had only treated it as a strand of worry. How could it affect his mind like this? No matter how profound Haitong's rouge staining art is, it's still just a Jindan level technique. This demon fox's strength is definitely not that of a demon king. Otherwise, even the nine-tailed fox clan would not be this powerful. I have 4 or 5 powerful bloodlines in my body. She said that she was waiting here to receive me. I'm afraid it wasn't all a lie. It's not good to fall out with her. Could it be that I'm also under the influence of the charm for having such a thought? Otherwise, how could I not have a trace of killing intent when she set up such a vicious scheme? If he couldn't solve it as soon as possible, I'm afraid I'll sink into depravity again. Thus, he steeled his heart and forced the poison in his body into his eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and skin, blinding his eyes, deafening his ears, and completely sealing off his 5 senses. Only then did his mind calm down slightly. Fellow Taoist Su, since this Hui Long isn't your lover, then there's no enmity between us. Don't force me to make a move. I counted to 3. If you don't let him go, Su Mi Rao caught the butterfly between her fingers. She smiled and said, counting again? You're really a one trick to dominate the world. I don't believe you can bear to hurt me. Why don't we continue with the wedding ceremony? After that, I'll listen to you no matter what you want. Even without the hostage, she did not believe that Li Qingshan would be able to attack her. If her charms sealed off her 5 senses, she could just grit her teeth and endure it. He could grit his teeth and get through it. There was no Su Jihu in the world anymore. The reason why Su Jihu was so notorious was not only because she was a femme fatale, but also because she was cute, so she could be forgiven no matter what she did. Although Li Qingshan could not see or hear, her voice and smile were clearly imprinted in his heart. He clenched his fists and took a step forward. Lang Jun, are you that afraid of seeing me? Langnun, are you that afraid to see me? Su Mi Rao smiled sweetly and walked up to him. Li Qingshan raised his fists, but it was as if he was soaking in warm water. His body was weak, and he could not even gather demonic energy, let alone use any divine abilities. Although they had not really fought, the danger was no less than any of the strong enemies he had faced. Aya, go ahead and hit me. If you kill me, let's see who will be your wife. Su Mi Rao puffed out her chest and pouted like a young girl acting coquettishly to her lover. Her fluffy and smooth fox tail quietly wrapped around Li Qingshan's waist. Seeing this, Chua Long's inner demons burned again. He wanted to skin Li Qingshan alive, but he did not dare to act rashly, afraid that he would make her unhappy. 3. Li Qingshan said the last number and punched. Su Mi Rao's smile did not change. She looked at the iron fist passing in front of her and suddenly revealed a shocked expression. Li Qingshan's arm extended and punched Chua Long's face. Chua Long was dizzy and could not react in time. His face collapsed and his head collapsed. Li Qingshan grinned, "Good wife, after I kill this cuckold emperor, I will come and marry you." Su Mi Rao gritted her teeth. Li Qingshan could not attack her because of her charm, but he could attack others. In an instant, a furious dragon roar resounded through Jasper Palace. Chua Long's headless body rapidly shrunk, revealing a jade seal with a golden dragon coiling around it. It turned into a 5-clawed golden dragon and pounced on Li Qingshan, coiling around him and biting him. All of his hatred was released at this moment, causing Li Qingshan to bleed and his flesh to be torn. "Come at me!" Li Qingshan roared and turned into a ferocious tiger, biting the back of the dragon's neck. His tiger claws were like knives, leaving marks on the golden dragon's back. Li Qingshan's body expanded like a mountain. His red fur stood on end and a vicious aura soared into the sky. The golden dragon also enlarged like a river. golden scales shone and dragon horns towered. Rumble! The two behemoths fought in the most primitive way. The pillars of the hall collapsed and the jade annulus collapsed. The fine jade palace was reduced to ruins, and the tens of thousands of rooms in the palace were turned to dust. The tiger's roar shook heaven and earth, the dragon's roar startled ghosts and gods. The tiger's roar and dragon's roar filled the sky, causing the expressions of the demoness monarch and the great cultivators to change drastically. As if they had just woken up from a dream, they scattered in all directions. The fierce battle turned this gentle place into a battlefield of slaughter, causing cracks to appear in the void. It turned out that Jasper Palace was the same as the 5 absolute secret tombs, built in a realm that had been created. Normally, it would only appear as an illusion, which caused little and to miss. However, their strength had long surpassed the limits of the 9 provinces, let alone this small realm, which immediately showed signs of collapse. Sumi Rao's expression changed. She knew that Li Qingshan wanted to use this battle to stimulate his fighting spirit to resist her charm. Between life and death, there was great terror, but also great courage and determination. Stop it, all of you. Chualong, you destroyed my Jasper Palace. I'm going to be angry. Li Qingshan, if you don't stop, I'll kill this crazy butterfly. He then picked up Shen Yu, and this cat. The battle between the dragon and tiger paused. At this moment, a twisted sword ray tore through the void. Little and Used abandoned Immortal with his left hand and Buddha slaying with his right. The Buddha slaying sword mercilessly stabbed towards Sumi Rao's chest. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 1325. Sumi Ao raised her brows. This white-bone successor was not easy to deal with. Just looking at her ethereal eyes made her feel displeased. Her charm techniques were useless against her. She was basically her natural nemesis. Seeing the incoming sword, Sumi Ao grabbed Xianyue and used her body as a shield. Xianyue said in a daze, "Shall Bai?" The sword pierced through her without any hesitation. Xuanyue's large eyes immediately dimmed and lost their light. The sword pierced through her body and pierced through Sumi Ao's clothes. Sumi Ao frowned. She did not expect Xianyue to be so ruthless. It was like piercing through a piece of rotten wood. There was no hesitation at all, causing her to lose the initiative. Unfortunately, this cat was also her favorite pet. It probably would not survive. It was not fun to be stabbed by this sword. She spun to avoid the sword. The tassels on her dress and the flower umbrella in her hand also spun. For a moment, the tassels spun and flowers bloomed. Numerous afterimages appeared, making it impossible to pinpoint where they were. A figure appeared behind Shaoan and whispered into her ear, "You white-bone demon, do you really think you can do whatever you want just because you're not charmed?" He shot a glance at her. "Kill her. Protect the palace lord." The demon monarchs charged at little and together like a group of fanatical believers. They attacked together without any regard for anything. There were also a few peak cultivators among them. Little and waved her left hand. The skull prayer beads scattered in the air and turned into skeleton demons. Under her control, they cooperated with each other and blocked all the attacks. He swung the Buddha slaying sword with his right hand and flung Xuanyue's corpse out of the spatial crack. Xuanyue's soft and cold body fell on the snowy plains. Suddenly, she blinked and her eyes regained their light. The sword wound on her chest healed. She looked at the snow. She looked at the snow in a daze. Meow? Little and touched the sword with her left hand and withdrew the golden Buddhist light. The Buddha slaying sword did not directly injure Xianyue. Although it was enough to kill a mere demon commander, she had the resurrection ability. As long as her demon core was intact, she could survive. And it looks. As her cultivation improved and she became a demon commander, the practicality of her innate divine ability became much stronger. She was soon revived and the effects of the bewitchment were removed. The sky above the snowy plain was crisscrossed with cracks. Dragon scales, claws, and tiger stripes flashed through the cracks. The roars of tigers and dragons stirred up the wind and snow, causing the forest to tremble. The dissipating force scraped off layer after layer of thick snow. Black and yellow soil was exposed. The demon kings and the skeleton devils were engaged in a fierce battle. Dazzling divine abilities tore open more cracks in the void, and the whistling spiritual light blasted the ground full of holes, causing it to tremble unceasingly. Or they would fly across the sky, break through the low clouds, and draw thousands of ravines. Xianyue shrank her neck, instinctively feeling fear. Bai Yi appeared beside her and raised her head in surprise. Gu, shu. Gu Yenying smiled and placed the folding fan vertically on her lips. Suddenly, a fierce expression appeared on his face. A pair of dark green wings unfurled from his back. His right hand curved like an eagle's claw as he suddenly grabbed at her. Xianyue cried out in alarm. Her figure flashed as she fled far away. Gu Yenying smiled slightly. Her expression turned serious again. Li Qingshan was covered in blood. Even in close combat, which he was best at, he could not gain the upper hand. Meanwhile, the aura of the Hui dragon was becoming stronger and stronger, constantly breaking through its limits. Even if it was injured, it would only shed dragon scales. However, there was no trace of blood. It was not a body of flesh and blood at all. This is a young soul. In the endless void, she had learned many cultivation techniques from Luo Ho Xiaoming. For this battle, she had made ample preparations. She could see the essence of the golden dragon at a glance. After surviving 4 heavenly tribulations, the nascent soul would turn into a Yin soul and officially step onto the path of immortality. From then on, it could leave its body and transcend the fragile physical body of a human cultivator. Not only would its lifespan be greatly extended, it would also undergo many mysterious changes. When dispersed, it would form qi. When gathered, it would take form. When traversing through the night, it could hide its tracks. When one with heaven and man, it could fly for thousands of miles. There were endless changes, and the power of all kinds of Dharma spells would increase greatly. However, it was still restrained by heavenly lightning and earthly fire. It could easily be injured in battle. It needed to be refined into a natal Dharma treasure. When it left its body, the Yin soul could be placed in it to kill the enemy from 1,000 miles away. When it survived 5 heavenly tribulations and turned into a Yang soul, not only would it not be restrained by heavenly lightning and earthly fire, it could also collect malevolent qi and refine it into the Yang soul. The Yang soul itself was equivalent to an indestructible Dharma treasure. Therefore, when Li Qingshan punched the head of the Hui dragon, it looked like it was heavily injured, but the damage it suffered was actually negligible. On the contrary, Sumi Rao's words almost caused the Hui dragon to go berserk. It was injured even more, which was why it fell into a passive position at the beginning and couldn't dodge the punch. This golden dragon was actually a natal Dharma treasure controlled by the Yang soul. Therefore, no matter how injured it would not shed a single drop of blood. Even Little An's Buddha's slaying sword might not be able to kill it in one strike. Such an enemy was indeed difficult to deal with. After all, it was an existence that had survived 5 heavenly tribulations. If possible, he really didn't want to be enemies with it. The gap between realms was not that easy to overcome, not to mention the unpredictable 9-tailed fox queen. Sumi Rao said, "Li Qingshan, I'll count to 3. If you don't stop, I'll kill Shenmeng Dai. I'll let you have a taste of this move." 1, 2. She counted so quickly that she didn't give Li Qingshan any time to think. She even glanced at Little and contemptuously. "If you have the ability, take another hostage from me." Little and couldn't determine where Sumi Rao's real body was, so he stood still. At this moment, he suddenly said, "Bitch?" "What did you say?" Sumi Rao's pupils shrank. "Bitch." Little and repeated and continued, "Shameless coquettish fox, bitch that thousands of men have sex with. She knows nothing but seducing men." She was still expressionless and her voice was emotionless. Her pink lips kept opening and closing as if she was reading from a script. But if no one stopped her, she could continue reading without repeating herself. The skeleton demons also cackled in the middle of the battle. They were the most loyal listeners. The demoness kings were stunned. They didn't know how to react. They also seemed to be in disbelief. Even though Li Qingshan and Chualong were in the middle of a fierce battle, they were still paying attention to the situation over here, because the person they cared about the most in this world was here. Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. He felt like his heart was breaking. He muttered, "My little N, shut up." Chua Long was furious. If not for his battle with Li Qingshan, he would have abandoned Li Qingshan and charged at little N. Su Mi Rao's chest heaved. With her natural charm, she had never been scolded before. She had never been insulted like this. She sneered, "Good, very good, I'll kill you today, no one can save you." Li Qingshan flew into a rage when he heard that. "Bitch, you dare?" Su Mi Rao was stunned. She was in disbelief. "You're also insulting me?" A smile appeared on Little An's face. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 1326. The beast qi in Li Qingshan's body surged like boiling lava. Under the restraint of the golden dragon, he slowly raised his head and let out an earth-shattering roar. In an instant, it was as if a volcano had erupted, or as if a storm had passed through. Waves of wind swept through the entire realm, sweeping up millions of tons of rocks and soil, turning it into a chaotic world. The demon kings were all panicking. Their fervor slowly faded as fear filled their hearts, recalling the times when they were still beasts. When they heard such a roar, they would run away. This was the king of beasts. At this moment, even the Chua dragon was just a foil, looking up in disbelief. On a faraway mountain, Luo Ho Xiaoming leaped up like a warrior who heard the rumbling of war drums, smiling, "That's more like it. Little Ya, you've been patient for a long time, come fight with me again." He took out a pebble and drew his bow, ready to fire. Su Mi Rao lowered her umbrella, her expression changing. "I thought he was just a lucky country bumpkin." She suddenly stared at Little and, "What's your relationship with him?" "It's none of your business," Little and pointed the Buddha-slaying sword at Su Mi Rao. "Is that so? I can't accept this. But is it worth it? You sacrificed everything to win the heart of a man, and he has never truly belonged to you." Su Mi Rao sighed. "With your intelligence and Baigu's inheritance, if it wasn't for him, you would have burned this world and ascended to the samsara long ago. You don't understand." Little and let go of his left hand. The abandoned immortal sword flew into the void of space and hovered around Su Mi Rao's umbrella, its sharp sword phantoms faintly discernible. He raised his hand again. The skeleton demons flew back and formed a skeleton demon formation, trapping Su Mi Rao within. Su Mi Rao was shocked, not because of the formation or the sword's threat, but because of this. The door behind her was wide open. She was practically in a hopeless situation. As expected, without the skeleton demons to stop them, and seeing that Su Mi Rao was threatened, the demon kings immediately activated their thaumaturgy and charged towards her. An agile and arrogant black-clothed woman turned into a black panther. His 4 claws stepped on lightning, accelerating to the extreme. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in his mouth, forming a pool of lightning that contained terrifying destructive power. The Thunder Shadow Leopard King was one of the 72 demon monarchs in the past. He possessed the bloodline of the Thunder Beast and had long since reached the peak of the 3rd heavenly tribulation. However, he was reluctant to part with the 9-tailed fox, so he stayed in the 9 states. This lightning bite was her most powerful innate ability. Coupled with the electric shock of the acceleration supernatural power, it had killed countless cultivators. Most of them were killed in one hit. Even though Little An's skeletal body was sturdy, he would definitely be injured after taking such a blow. Following closely behind were the attacks of so many demon kings. His life was in danger. Right at this moment, a scarlet tiger leaped out and pounced on the Thunder Shadow Leopard King. With the wind god wings on his back, he turned around and roared. The demon monarchs retreated in panic, not daring to advance. They clearly had an absolute advantage in numbers, but they all felt like they were facing this beast king alone. Su Mi Rao's eyes widened in disbelief. How did he break free from the Chua dragon? Then she saw the scarlet tiger covered in blood, so he used that move. His innate ability has recovered. Wind God Wings, Tiger Demon Roar, and Tiger Demon Rage were the 3 major supernatural powers of the Tiger Demon transformation, and they were unleashed to the extreme in Tiger Demon mode. Only then could he break free from the Golden Dragon, pounce on the Thunder Shadow Leopard King, and intimidate the demons with a roar. Then she met little Anne's ethereal eyes. She was gambling with her life. If Li Qingshan's reaction was slightly slower, he might not even be able to break free from the Chua dragon. She might die on the spot. No, even if she lost the gamble, she could still completely awaken Li Qingshan's fighting spirit and break free from the influence of the charm. Sumi Rao originally wanted to use Shenmeng Dai to threaten Li Qingshan, but she could not say anything at this moment. The forsaken immortal sword suddenly shot out from the void, drawing a complicated and profound trajectory. 139 small white bone swords crisscrossed and enveloped her entire body. The skeleton demon formation contracted at the same time, spewing out samadhi white bone fire. Sumi Rao flicked her finger without looking back, hitting the forsaken immortal sword's blade and sending it flying. The paper umbrella in her hand spun, and the small white bone swords fell to the ground. The raging flames could not get within 3 zhang of her. She was actually at ease, completely fearless. The only thing she was truly afraid of was the Buddha-slaying sword. The bell rang, and the Buddha-slaying sword moved. Little Anne stepped on the skull and swung her sword. Sumi Rao raised her paper umbrella and waited for her to come. She made up her mind, I will teach you a painful lesson, and let you understand that men are unreliable. I will let you watch this man die in battle with your own eyes. Compared to killing you, this is the only way to make you feel pain. No one can insult me without paying the price. Under this primordial myriad flower umbrella, you will understand my true terror. Just as she was concentrating, a jade-like hand reached out from the void and gently took Shenmeng Dai from her hand. Sumi Rao was alarmed. She dared not be distracted. However, Little Anne withdrew her sword and did not look at her again. She turned around to help Li Qingshan. Even the smelt bone prayer beads and the forsaken immortal sword formation were withdrawn. After Li Qingshan lunged at the lightning shadow leopard king and ordered the demons to retreat, he immediately retracted all of the tiger demon's abilities. He turned into a spirit turtle and retreated into his shell. Chua Long's furious attacks rained down at almost the same time. His claws and teeth left marks on the turtle shell. Li Qingshan knew very well that an opponent like Chua Long could not be killed by a single eruption from the tiger demon. He had chosen to transform into the tiger demon to stimulate his fighting spirit. He wanted to deal the greatest damage to Chua Long while he was suffering from chi deviation. Through the battle, he truly understood Chua Long's strength. Although he did not gain the upper hand, he managed to force out all of the poison in his body and remove the effects of the charm. However, Chua Long recovered rapidly, as he was not just a human emperor. He also represented the will of the heavens and all living beings in the world to kill the demon king Li Qingshan. He forced Li Qingshan to transform into a spirit turtle for the first time in battle. He could only take a beating passively. The crux of this battle lay with Sumi Rao, whose strength was unfathomable and friend or foe was unknown. Ma, am Fox Queen, I've heard of your great name for a long time. You really do live up to your reputation. You're truly a beauty. Even I feel moved when I see you. Gu Yenying released Shenmeng Dai and walked out of thin air. She was not as emotionless as Little Anne. She was also affected by the charm. Her sharp, hawk-like eyes became gentle as well. However, her personality was extraordinary. After obtaining the Kuan-Prung feather, her carefree nature became even more ingrained in her bones. At the same time, she cultivated the illustrations of Naraka. The scorching winds of hell washed over her soul, using intense pain to resist the charm. Lastly, as a woman, she could not be naturally restrained by charm like men. It was absolutely impossible for him to control her mind in an instant. I'm free. Shenmeng Dai flapped her wings happily. I understand now. I'm the main character. The world is vast, but I'm the greatest. I'm undying. Sumi Rao understood that she had been fooled by Little Anne again. She secretly cursed, how does Li Qingshan know so many crazy women? Chapter 1327. Limited Time Rush by 2015 Summer Korean Edition Male T-shirt Short Sleeves Silk Glossy Cotton Genuine German BMW Men's Casual T-shirt. Limited Time Rush by Transparent toe, transparent hidden, transparent pantyhose. 9.99 renminbi, give it to your girlfriend, hee hee. Support the development of this website. Buy from here. Go! Gu Yenying, do you think you can show off in front of me just because you got a strand of mixed hair? Su Beirao was the first person to discover the feather of chaos when it fell into 9 states. However, she wasn't a feather, so it wasn't worth much even if she got it. She might even get involved in a deadly calamity. It wasn't worth it. Gu Yenying bowed respectfully. I'm not your match? Su Beirao said maliciously, if I want to, you should call me mother instead. The eagle god was like a feather, fluttering up and down uncontrollably in the chaos. Even though he didn't rush up to help her, it was only because she didn't really care about him. That shapeless charm was also a suppression of absolute strength. Even human Emperor Qi Long couldn't break free, and even Li Qingshan almost fell for it, let alone a male Fey king. She only needed to give the order, and they would be able to kill each other. Gu Yenying said with a smile, if you like my useless father, it's naturally my honor. It's only right for me to call you Mother Empress. It's just a change of name. Su Beirao felt like she had punched empty air, and her chest felt stuffy. She knew Gu Yenying's past very well, because she had secretly decided to collect her. She was only waiting for her to pass the 3rd heavenly tribulation before making a move. However, Li Qingshan appeared halfway, and their conflict deepened. At that time, she didn't want to have anything to do with Li Qingshan, so she gave up. The person Gu Yenying valued and missed the most was her mother. She thought that she could use this weakness to anger her and deepen the charm's influence. He hadn't expected to receive such an answer. Instead, he felt like he was the one who had suffered a loss. She sneered, I didn't expect that even someone like you would fall to this point, risking your life for a man. Gu Yenying said, sigh. Could it be that in your eyes, there is only love between a man and a woman? Su Beirao questioned, you dare to say that you haven't fallen in love? With a swish, Gu Yenying unfolded her folding fan. Covering half of her face, it was clearly the shy posture of a woman. However, he was still as carefree as ever. He smiled and said, humans are not plants. How can we be emotionless? A strange light flashed in Su Mir's eyes. Good, no wonder that Li Qingshan fell in love with you at first sight but couldn't get his hands on you. You will be one of my best collectibles. Come on. Gu Yenying smiled and shook her head. I don't want to be a collector's item, and I don't want to fight with you. I just want to give you some advice. The great fox of Su, charming all living beings. Don't you think it's a bit ugly that you have to personally fight and kill? Sigh, this can't be helped. Who told those stinky men to be so disobedient? And there's also such an intelligent woman like you who is so stubborn. Su Beirao sighed helplessly and even blinked innocently, almost making Gu Yenying believe her. She was relying on the hot wind of hell to maintain a thread of clarity. Even if you get what you want in this battle, the women in Qiongyu Palace will probably have their souls scattered. Gu Yenying pointed her folding fan at the chaos. The tornado split open a path, and the 5-clawed golden dragon was gradually tearing apart the spirit turtle's shell. However, the Thunder Phantom Leopard King was bitterly holding on under the spirit turtle. Li Qingshan didn't let her go when he transformed from a tiger demon into a spirit turtle. Instead, he suppressed her with all his strength, preparing to exchange her for Shen Mengdai. In the end, Shen Mengdai was saved by Gu Yenying, so he simply used her as a meat cushion to share some of the golden dragon's pressure. The Thunder Phantom Leopard King was also a famous great demon king, but how could it be compared to the current Li Qingshan? It couldn't break free from the spirit turtle's suppression even with all its strength. There was also the 5-clawed golden dragon above. Her organs were crushed, and blood flowed out of her 7 orifices. Fortunately, her strong physique prevented her from being crushed to death. But if this continued, she wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Meanwhile, Little and watched from the side, defending against the other Demon King's attacks. Just now, he could block them with just the skull prayer beads. Now, he was personally taking action. By using the soul-altering bell and the blood sea banner, he had already captured several Yao Kings. Gu Yenying, Do you think I'll be threatened like this? Every one of them is willing to die for me. Su Bei Rao narrowed her eyes, emitting a dangerous aura. No one will doubt their feelings for you, but if you don't care about their lives, how are you different from those stinky men? Even that despicable, vulgar, licentious, and heartless Li Qingshan wouldn't do such a thing. Gu Yening looked deeply at Su Bei Rao, her eyes filled with trust and a trace of worry. Su Bei Rao was momentarily speechless. She clenched her teeth. What glib words! After hearing your words, if I don't admit defeat, I'll simply be an ugly, stupid, despicable, and heartless woman who can't even compare to a stinky man. Of course you're not a woman like that, Gu Yening said sincerely, without any pretense at all. Su Bei Rao hesitated. All right, Li Qingshan, I order you to release my immediately. I won't be your enemy anymore. Bei Rao, don't worry about me. Do what you want to do. The Thunder Phantom Leopard King said with difficulty. Regardless of whether it was because she was charmed at the beginning, now it was her true feelings. As long as she could make her smile, she wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice her life. Su Bei Rao sighed in her heart. She recalled what Gu Yening said just now, humans aren't plants. How can one be heartless? Even if she had a heart of stone, the thousands of years of companionship and sacrifice were enough to leave a deep impression. Her acquaintance with them was still vivid in her mind. Could she really bear to see them all die here? She couldn't help but look up at the sky. Country Lord, it's too lonely here. Is this also your scheme? Can I call you by your name too? Bei Rao, it's too noisy here. Why don't we take a walk around the Eastern Sea? I'm very curious about the country of Green Hill. Let the men settle their own matters. Gu Yening extended her hand to Su Bei Rao. From here to the Eastern Sea, they had to cross 3 provinces, a total of 200,000 miles. She was bound by the laws of heaven and earth and couldn't rush back in a short time. This was the only way now. Su Bei Rao knew that if she didn't leave, Li Qingshan wouldn't be at ease. Perhaps she had already lost the moment he broke free from the charm. It was indeed meaningless to continue entangling with him, but she was unwilling to give up. Qi Long, don't blame me for being heartless. I'm bound by the blood oath of the river Styx and have to marry this man. I originally wanted to solve it myself, but I didn't expect it to be in vain. I only hope that you can help me break free so that we can continue our previous fate. Qi Long's aura was greatly boosted when he heard this. Like all heroes who fought against the Demon King, he felt the encouragement of true love. The golden dragon fiercely bit off a piece of tortoise shell. Li Qingshan cursed, this stupid cuckold emperor. But he was relieved in his heart. Su Bei Rao smiled slyly and grabbed Gu Yening's hand. Yening, you have to accompany me. In an instant, the Kuan Peng spread its wings and flew thousands of miles. To be continued. 00 SY. Chapter 1328. Boom. The moment Sumi Rao left, the entire realm collapsed completely. The rampaging energy that had been accumulating for a long time poured out hysterically. A wave of air dispersed the snow and clouds. The blue sky was clear, and the sun was dazzling. Next, millions of tons of soil and rocks that had been stirred into chaos shot out in all directions, tearing the forests apart. Yellow sand filled the air, and the sky darkened. A yellow mushroom cloud soared into the sky from a 300-meter-deep crater, reaching deep into the clouds. The entire world seemed to be shaking. A bolt of lightning shot out from the sinkhole and turned into the appearance of the Thunder Shadow Leopard King. At the moment when the domain collapsed, she also felt a little relaxed from the heavy suppression. It was not easy for her to escape from death, but she did not have the slightest thought of revenge. She looked back at the battlefield with lingering fear. Was this still the Jiuzhou she was familiar with? She looked to the east. The Kuan Peng had already descended into the horizon after spreading its wings for thousands of kilometers. Its speed was also unimaginable. She did not dare to stay any longer, turning into a bolt of lightning and giving chase. Little and shook the Blood Sea banner, and a few demon kings rolled out. The demons scattered, most of them flying towards the east. Meanwhile, the great cultivators that Chua Long brought had been resisting the charm with all their might. They could not care about anything else. Almost all of them were heavily injured by the impact. The few weak-willed great cultivators that attacked little and were all dazed after Sumi Rao left, as if they had just woken up from a dream. Little and seized the opportunity and attacked with both swords, killing all of them. Li Qingshan thought, it's all thanks to Yenying this time. I've finally gotten rid of this huge problem for now. Otherwise, he would not have been unharmed when the Thunder Shadow Leopard King detonated its demon core. After all, it was a famous great demon king from 5,000 years ago. There was only one enemy now. It was finally time to counterattack. Luo Xiaoming, what are you waiting for? The Chua dragon raised its golden dragon head. He looked towards the distant mountain peak and saw Luo Ho Xiaoming holding a slingshot. His long hair was like fire, and his handsome face was unusually fierce, as if a demon god had descended. Luo Xiaoming? Could it be? He suddenly opened his dragon mouth, and golden light quickly gathered. It shot towards Luo Ho Xiaoming. Darkness gushed out from Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes and enveloped everything, causing the world to darken. It was as if a black curtain had descended from the sky, blinding all of Chualong's senses and even blocking the heavenly mystery senses. He shot out an attack that surpassed the limits of this world. In an instant, the golden light disappeared, and the dragon head shattered. All right. Li Qingshan's body relaxed, and the spirit tortoise shone with colorful light. He transformed into a 10,000 feet tall fiend celestial and grabbed the golden dragon with his dark cloud-like hand. Little and descended from the sky, holding the Buddha's slaying sword with both hands. The tip of the sword was shrouded in layers of Buddhist light as it stabbed toward the back of the golden dragon. The sword ray shattered the golden scales, and the tip of the sword pierced the dragon's body. Li Qingshan was shocked. He won. In previous battles, Little An's Buddha-slaying sword could be said to be the #1 weapon that determined victory and defeat, deciding life and death. No matter what kind of opponent it was, they would be hit by her sword. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. As expected, the headless golden dragon's body shrank rapidly. Then it turned into a jade seal. Its 4 horns were missing, and the golden dragon coiled around it was missing scales and claws, as well as a dragon head. Suddenly, a hand picked up the jade seal. In the blue sky, the Kuan Peng was riding on the gales. It flew towards the eastern sea. Don't worry, there's no need to hold it so tightly. I won't go back, Sumi Rao smiled. Do you think he can win without me? At least he has a better chance of winning. Gu Yenying didn't dare to be careless. Being by her side was even more dangerous than facing the Chualong. With her current speed, the Chualong couldn't hurt her, while her charm was invisible. You're wrong, I'm his only chance of survival. If it weren't for me, he might already be dead. I've been helping him all this time, but he doesn't appreciate it and insists on walking that path of death. Sumi Rao shook her head regretfully. Is that so? Gu Yenying didn't deny it. You don't believe me? It's no wonder your cultivation level isn't high enough. Even though you obtained the inheritance of the great sage of chaotic heavens, you haven't completely converted it into your own power, nor have you seen the power of a human sovereign. The great sage of chaotic heavens. Gu Yenying thought, with her cultivation, she probably already knew about the Kuan Peng feather. If she had taken action, how could it have fallen into the hands of the feather human king Bai Chen? She asked, why didn't you take it? Even if you don't need it, there are still many feather race in your Jasper Palace. Because I don't want them to die for nothing, Sumi Rao sighed. So you're saying that Mi Rao is as gentle and loving as I thought? Everything she did was out of goodwill. Heh, no need to be sarcastic. I was bound by the river Styx blood oath, so I had to help Li Qingshan, help him become your slave. He was born with such charm, he can't blame me for not being able to control himself. But have you ever thought that when I married him, all I had to do was pull him under the primordial myriad flower umbrella and he wouldn't be able to escape from me? I was the one who caused Chualong to go berserk, causing him to be unable to use his full strength, forcing him to fight with Li Qingshan in the most foolish way possible. It's true, I actually didn't want Li Qingshan to die here. But since he chose this path himself, don't blame me. So it's the Raha race. I heard that a godchild of the Azura path fell and left, claiming to be the peerless genius second only to Luo Holuo, since the birth of the Azura path, the chosen one who can reunite the various tribes of the Azura path. Could it be you? No wonder you could shatter my true dragon jade seal. This is the only natal magical treasure that I've brought from the 9 regions to the human realm. It has gathered the dragon chi of the 9 regions, and I've also collected the 5 elements pure metal in the human realm. It's incomparably sturdy, but it was almost destroyed by your attack. Shockingly, the owner of that hand was the mortal Emperor Qi Long. His dragon robe was completely spotless, and he played with the damaged true dragon jade seal as he spoke of its origins. He didn't reveal the slightest dejection on his face, and he even revealed a wisp of a smile. Cut the crap. Li Qingshan punched down, causing the ground to crack and tremble. However, with a flash of golden light, Chua Long disappeared, and his voice came from the sky again. What a dangerous strike! As expected of the successor of White Bone. Fortunately, I'm not a Buddhist, or this life treasure would have been destroyed by you. Chua Long stared at Little N. The yang spirit was different from the body of flesh and blood, and it could change endlessly. Before the Buddha-slaying sword pierced the golden dragon, he had already reformed his yang spirit, so it wasn't hurt at all. Unless his life treasure was directly destroyed, only then would his yang spirit be hurt, but that was simply impossible. This was also one of the main reasons why he didn't bring his physical body here. Li Qingshan looked up at Chua Long. His figure almost overlapped with the sun, high up in the sky, unfathomable, like a god. This was the yang spirit of the human cultivation path, an existence that surpassed the limits of the physical body and could fight against a demon emperor. Floating astronomy. Chapter 1329. Li Qingshan, I actually have to thank you. At this point, Chua Long bowed slightly. His anger had already disappeared without a trace, but it did not affect his majesty as an emperor at all. Instead, he regained his bearing as if everything was under his control. If not for you, I would have forever sunk into her charm. Perhaps I would never have known her. After all, she was a fox with Su Jihu. But if not for that, she would not have been qualified to be my empress. Chua Long, I remember she said she wanted to marry me. Li Qingshan spat out the last word and suddenly activated the tiger demon roar kill. A violent gale rushed into the sky. Chua Long used his fingers like a sword and cut through the gale. Even his clothes did not flutter. Only the strong can be the most beautiful in the world. Well said. Li Qingshan's right arm expanded and stretched across the sky. He spread his fingers and enveloped Chua Long. Absorb. Chua Long's fluttering clothes and hair froze as if they were sealed in invisible amber. Li Qingshan clenched his fists. Destroy. Chua Long's body disintegrated and turned into clouds of dense golden dragon chi. Quite a powerful innate ability, but it's useless. The transformation of the yang spirit is extremely soft and also extremely hard. The dragon chi condensed and returned to its original appearance. His smile did not change. Li Qingshan attacked one after another, using all kinds of innate abilities, but none of them could really hurt Chua Long. Luo Ho Xiaoming held the slingshot silently. Little and held his sword and did not attack. They watched Li Qingshan deal with Chua Long alone. It was very different from when he transformed into a golden dragon. Chua Long allowed Li Qingshan to attack but did not fight back. It was like an adult playing with a child. Li Qingshan finally stopped and panted slightly. The restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth made it difficult for him to absorb spirit chi. The recovery of his demonic chi was very slow. Moreover, the only innate ability of the Phoenix transformation, Phoenix Nirvana, had not been fully recovered. He could at most be reborn once in this battle. If he did it again, he would become an egg. Very good, you finally realized the gap between us. Why are you glaring at me? To thank you, I've already let you have many moves. I know that the identities and legacies of the 3 of you are extraordinary. If any of you had the same cultivation base as me, I would have been able to kill you. I will definitely retreat. So, I actually don't want to be enemies with you. Why don't we try to turn enemies into friends? When Long gained the upper hand, he actually showed signs of wanting to reconcile, as if he was afraid of Li Qingshan and the others' identities, and was unwilling to get into trouble. What do you think? Li Qingshan glanced at Luo Ho Xiaoming and Little N, as if he really wanted to reconcile. Long smiled faintly. Nothing was easier to deal with than an enemy who had lost the will to fight. Yes, he had never wanted to reconcile. If he was afraid of Li Qingshan and the other two's identities and backgrounds, he would have thought of a way to reconcile with them. However, the Great Tao was competing for supremacy. There was no room for weakness. To reach this stage of cultivation, everyone had experienced countless dangers. Wealth came from danger. The divine blood of the Azura clan, Little N's legacy of white bones, and Li Qingshan's cultivation method were all treasures that were hard to find in the human world. They were worth risking their lives. If he let them go today, with their bloodline inheritance, their cultivation speed would definitely be far faster than his, and it was hard to guarantee that they would not take revenge in the future. That would truly be living a life worse than death. Little N said, he hasn't fully recovered from his injury, so he wants to buy time. Long was shocked. He didn't expect her to see through him. The yang spirit was soft and hard, as fast as lightning and invincible, but it was most afraid of inner demons. Although the body was a bag of flesh that had to be abandoned, it was also a ship to cross the sea of bitterness. In the state of out-of-body experience, one had to control oneself with a strong mind. Once he went crazy, the consequences would be unimaginable. Luo Ho Xiaoming said, we can fight, but we have to wait for Yenying to come back and restrain the speed of his yang spirit. He's just a human emperor. How dare he put on an act in front of me? Li Qingshan smiled and said, don't say that, he's still very strong, and we need the four of us to fight him. But if you want to use psychological attacks, you should look at your opponent first. Long, I'm going to kill you. Long showed a look of anger, and could no longer maintain the demeanor of an emperor. His expression became solemn. In today's battle, no one would be spared. We've arrived at the East Sea. Gu Yenying descended from the sky with Su Mi Rao, and landed on a cliff on the East Sea. Surrounded by white clouds, the cliff was thousands of feet high, rugged and steep, as if it had been carved by a knife and an axe, overlooking thousands of miles of the sea. The moist sea breeze blew in their faces, the water rippled, and the seagulls gathered. It was a magnificent and peaceful scene. Yunya Mountain, I haven't been here for a long time. Su Mi Rao showed a nostalgic look. This was a famous scenic spot in Yunzhou, and even in the world. Over the long years, she had come here many times, but in the end, she was tired of it. When there was so much time that it was difficult to squander, it would become a great burden. Yenying, you're a disciple of legalism. It's rumored that the deepest depths of the Hell Realm, the Avicii Hell, no longer carry out any punishments. All it does is extend every inch of time by 1,000 times. I wonder if that's true or not. I don't know. No one has ever been able to connect with the Avicii Hell. They held hands. One was a femme fatale, devastatingly beautiful, while the other was elegant and outstanding. At first glance, they seemed like a pair of lovers touring the scenery of Yunya Mountain. Must we go back? Su Mi Rao tightened her grip on Gu Yenying's hand. Definitely, Gu Yenying said firmly. She could use the feathers of chaotic heaven to transform into a Kunping and return to the Dragon Province and the battlefield quickly. This was something she had considered before she brought Su Mi Rao to the East Sea. Su Mi Rao pouted. You said you wanted to listen to me talk about the kingdom of Green Hill. So you were lying. Sorry. Next time. Gu Yenying apologized seriously. What if I insist on not letting go? Su Mi Rao wrinkled her nose, which made her seem even more like a spoiled child. If you like it, I'll give this hand to you. She had been prepared for something like this the moment she held Su Mi Rao's hand. She was not bold enough to break her wrist. Who wants it? You don't even know how painful it is to hold this hand, Su Mi Rao pouted. Suddenly, she touched it gently out of concern. Does it hurt? Gu Yenying closed her eyes and smiled bitterly. If this continued, she would probably fall for it too. If she had not experienced spatial travel, she probably would have surrendered already. With a thought, she opened her eagle eye. A gust of wind swept past, and her right hand was severed at the wrist. Blood dripped onto the cliff. Afterwards, a great gust of wind blew, and the Kunpeng spread its wings, sweeping through the water and scattering the clouds. I'll leave this with you as a souvenir. If I can return, tell me about the great sage of chaotic heaven. Sumi Rao looked at the Kunpeng with its wings hanging like the clouds, feeling a little defeated. Am I the one who knows how to seduce? Or is that Li Qingshan the one who knows how to seduce? They're all standing on his side like they're possessed. She angrily threw the severed hand back to her. I told you, I don't want it. Gu Yenying smiled and thanked her, then flapped her wings and flew away. Sumi Rao sat down on the edge of the cliff, lamenting, Can I really not escape? I just wanted to be a good person. Anyone who had some understanding of the Yu Su clan would be dumbstruck when they heard these words. Fine, I didn't want to get involved in this great calamity, but the heavens are playing tricks on me. After feeling sorry for herself, she began to feel malicious intent. Li Qingshan, if you really can survive this, I'll assist you in turning the 3,000 worlds and the 6 realms of Sasra upside down. I'll spread my great name beyond the 9 heavens. Even if I'm doomed eternally, even if my soul disperses, I won't have lived my life as a fox with Su in vain. Chapter 1330. Since you're so stubborn, I can only accompany you to the end. The Chua dragon was still in the sky when he said the first half of the sentence, but the second half of the sentence had already sounded in the Imperial Dragon King. He returned to his dragon throne. Your Majesty! When the fine jade palace completely collapsed, the grand cultivators all hid in the Emperor Dragon King, and used the coiling Dragon Grand formation to avoid the aftermath of the battle. His mood fluctuated a few times. Putting aside the fact that the 9-tailed fox queen was here, when the golden dragon's head exploded, he felt as if he had lost his parents. When Li Qingshan was rendered helpless by the flood dragon high nobility god, he was overjoyed. And at this moment, when Hui Long returned to the Emperor Dragon King, their emotions were extremely complicated. Clearly, as Li Qingshan and the others had said, Hui Long did not have the strength to sweep through everything. Otherwise, he would have attacked and destroyed his enemies long ago, instead of retreating here. They had just escaped from the battlefield, but in the blink of an eye, they were drawn into a new battle. Perhaps Chua Long would eventually be able to kill Li Qingshan with the power of his Yang spirit, but they might not be able to live to see that day. The left Imperial Advisor and the Skyfrost Wolf King were examples of what had happened to them. A battle of this level was too dangerous for them. Chua Long ordered, Lu Sikong, return immediately, gather the vassals, and prepare to sacrifice to the heavens. Lu Sikong was one of the 9 ministers, Dong Jingkong. At the same time, he was also the Minister of Works, the top Mahist Grandmaster, and the builder of this Emperor Dragon King. Together with his 2 subordinates, the assistant ministers of the Ministry of Works, he stayed behind to guard the Emperor Dragon King, and did not participate in the great battle in Jadeite Palace. Yes. Lu Sikong's expression was wooden and emotionless. It was as if he didn't see the expressions on his colleagues' faces. He immediately drove the Emperor Dragon King to rise into the sky. At the same time, he turned the ship around and headed for Dragon Head Mountain. Chua Long leaned against the back of the golden chair and said indifferently, My dear subjects, if your injuries are not serious, I will be able to help you. Prepare to fight. When the officials heard this, their hearts turned cold, and for a moment, no one responded. No one who could become a grand cultivator was a fool. With the speed of the Yang spirit, Li Qingshan and the other 2 could not stop him at all. He insisted on riding the Emperor Dragon King back. Naturally, it wasn't for the sake of putting on airs. It was clearly for the sake of making use of trash to exhaust the opponent's strength, and they probably belonged to the category of trash. Just now, they hadn't even directly participated in the battle, but they were already injured from the various impacts. Their minds were especially damaged. The 4 assistant ministers of the Ministry of Personnel and Ministry of Revenue could not resist Sumi Rao's charms and were killed by the Buddha's enemy. Although they had endured it with their mental cultivation, They did not lose control of their minds on the spot. But if he wanted to get rid of the nine-tailed fox queen's charm, even 8 to 10 years might not be enough. It might even become an inner demon and suffer for the rest of his life. Now, Chua Long actually wanted them to directly fight against Li Qingshan. That was simply, the god of longevity is tired of living. Once the Emperor Dragon King was blasted apart, no one had the confidence that they could escape this calamity. But now that they were all on the same boat, they did not dare to disobey Chua Long's command. Some of them were already filled with regret. They had thought that this was a shortcut to ascending to the human world, but they did not expect it to be a life-threatening talisman. If only he had known this would happen. He had to stop the emperor from worshipping the heavens no matter what. Chua Long had a panoramic view of everyone's expressions. He could even sense the intense fluctuations in their minds. He sneered in his heart. Wanting to take a shortcut but not willing to take risks, how could there be such a good thing in the world? He did not care whether the Emperor Dragon King could successfully return. It was enough as long as Li Qingshan came to stop him. Every bit of energy he expended would increase his chances of winning. It would be even better if Li Qingshan was not willing to fall for it. He could then calmly adjust his yang spirit and suppress his inner demons. When he returned to the imperial court, the outcome would be set. This was an overt plot. Flames shot out from the stern of the ship as the Emperor Dragon King began to accelerate. At this moment, a thick shadow suddenly shrouded them. The officials looked up and saw a huge mountain rising from the ground, shooting straight into the clouds and blocking the path to the east. Under the mountain, 2 red stars flashed. It was Li Qingshan's fiery tiger eyes as he carried the entire mountain with his fiend god body. The deck was filled with cries of surprise. Even though they had seen it once on Dragon Head Mountain, they were still frightened and felt an irresistible sense of weakness when they saw it again. Chua Long sat upright on the dragon throne, unmoved. His eyes flashed with golden light. "My beloved officials, be careful. This thief is coming." Li Qingshan roared out and hurled as hard as he could. The mountain smashed towards the Emperor Dragon King. Chua Long waved his hand. Boom! The main cannon of the Emperor Dragon King, Dragon's Roar, opened fire and blasted through the mountain, leaving a large hole with a radius of 300 meters. The momentum of the falling mountain paused, as if it was frozen in midair. Almost at the same time, the deck and the body of the ship were densely packed with cannons. In an instant, tens of thousands of cannons fired in unison, and the dazzling light beams blasted the mountain into pieces. Smoke and dust hung high in the sky like a yellow cloud, and gravel scattered like hail. The Emperor Dragon King broke through the smoke and clouds, passing over Li Qingshan's head and going straight into the clouds. Chua Long stood on the dragon head of the ship and looked down at Li Qingshan. He casually pointed and thousands of spiritual lights shot towards the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The light beams fell like rain, and semicircular light balls rose from the ground. Hills were razed to the ground, leaving behind a land riddled with holes. The 1,000-meter-tall demon disappeared, and Li Qingshan turned back into his human form. He spread his wings of wind and shuttled through the densely packed light beams with a storm. He even went against the flow of the light beams and arrived at the bottom of the Emperor Dragon King, a blind spot where the firepower was the least concentrated. He gripped the living soil of the 9 heaven tightly and unleashed the earth force field. The Emperor Dragon King shook violently as if it was suddenly pressed down by a mountain, and its soaring momentum came to a halt. The sound of steel and wood twisting and cracking filled their ears. The great cultivators on the ship all felt like a great disaster was about to befall them. "Break for me!" Li Qingshan took advantage of the situation and punched out. The power of vibration surged wildly, and black cracks appeared in the void. There was no formation in the world that could block his punch. In fact, just the strength of the ox demon contained in his fist was enough to break through all barriers. Moreover, there was also the invincible vibration power, which was enough to split the Emperor Dragon King into 2. But at this moment, the golden light quickly gathered at the bottom of the ship. All the spiritual power of the formation that enveloped the Emperor Dragon King was gathered at this point, and it was as dazzling as a golden sun. It forcibly blocked the terrifying power of vibration and bounced back Li Qingshan's fist. Li Qingshan frowned and spread his wings to fly away. How could he not understand Chualong's plan? He could not waste too much energy here. He had wanted to concentrate all his strength and defeat the enemy in one blow, but he had underestimated Chualong's methods. Chualong reclined on the dragon throne and held an exquisite golden compass in his hand. It was the core of the formation plate that controlled the formation. Other than him, no one in the world could have such fast reaction speed and control to operate the formation to such a level. Chapter 1331. When Chualong was dealing with Li Qingshan's attack, he split his attention into three, paying attention to where Luo Ho Xiaoming and Little N were at the same time. If they took the risk to launch a sneak attack, he was confident that he could kill them here. No matter how powerful their inherited bloodline was, they had only gone through 3 heavenly tribulations. However, to his disappointment, the two of them maintained a safe distance from him, not giving him a chance to attack. Luo Ho Xiaoming had fought in the Azura realm for countless years, so no one could have a better grasp of the overall situation. He had just gone through 3 heavenly tribulations and had not reached the peak, so the power he possessed was limited. At the same time, he was bound by heaven's will. He had to ensure that every pellet had a decisive effect, so he would not attack easily. Little N was intelligent, and very few people could compare to her. She had the same judgment. Her Buddha-slaying sword was a sword of absolute killing, so the other white bone treasures had to be used to protect her body and prevent Chualong's sneak attack. If they wanted to obtain victory in this battle, it was still far from the time for her to attack. There really are no flaws. As expected, I have to kill you first, Li Qingshan. Chualong sneered and waved his hand, ordering, "Fellow Taoists, what are you waiting for?" The officials looked at each other. Just now, when Li Qingshan used the earth force field, they were also affected. They felt as if all the bones in their bodies were about to be crushed by their own weight, and they were still aching now. If they faced Li Qingshan head-on, they would probably die in vain. Don't worry, this great imperial dragon formation is extremely sturdy, and it can allow you to use your spells without facing the enemy head-on. If that Li Qingshan breaks through the formation and enters, it will be like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, and there will be a calamity of destruction. Chualong looked slightly displeased, and there was a faint threat in his tone. Yes. None of the officials dared to disobey. They all unleashed techniques and wielded their arcane treasures, ready to give Li Qingshan a head-on blow. However, they felt like they were provoking a furious tiger through a paper cage. It was truly frightening. Hey, that Li Qingshan is gone. At this time, the Emperor Dragon King was already high up in the sky, but he couldn't find any trace of Li Qingshan. The nation protecting Eagle God's eyes narrowed. Up there. Li Qingshan's attack missed and he immediately let go. He soared into the astral wind layer and continued to ascend. No matter how the astral winds howled, they were unable to harm him in the slightest. He had cultivated to this level. The so-called astral winds and magnetic forces were unable to stop him from ascending to the heavens and descending to the earth. Chualong stood with his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky. How are you going to resolve this situation? The astral winds suddenly calmed down a lot. Through the radiance of the sun, the stars shone in the dark void. Li Qingshan looked straight at the light of the sun. It was not the real big fireball that he remembered from his previous life, but more like an illusion. He suddenly felt that this world was a mystery. When he turned his head in an instant, he had a panoramic view of the entire 9 states. The jade-green mist province, the snow-white frost province, the yellow sands of the scarlet province, the sea of clouds of the cloud province, the waves of the 4 seas surrounded this continent of the 9 states. This is the world that I have always been fighting in. The huge Emperor Dragon King turned into a golden floater and slowly swam towards the center of the dragon province. In the east, a dark azure bird flew through the air. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and the demon chi in his body began to boil. He pushed the miniature world in his body to the limit. Earth, fire, wind, water, and space. The ox, tiger, turtle, phoenix, and ape formed a single entity. They broke through the restraints of the laws of the world and absorbed all tangible and intangible power. Their bodies shone with dazzling light. At this moment, all the beings of the 9 states only needed to look up. One would be able to see a shining star competing with the sun in splendor. Kuan Peng flew across the land. Gu Yenying smiled and sped up. Su Mi Rao looked up at the sky and suddenly hoped for his victory. That figure that looked down on everything. It was indeed exuding a strange charm. Luo Ho Xiaoming smiled. So that's how it is. The star descended from the sky. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and spread his arms. In a free-fall state, he dove into the violent atmospheric winds once again. The wings of wind constantly unfurled. 100 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters, as if they wanted to absorb all the atmospheric winds into their wings. He fully unleashed the force field of Earth, exerting thousands of tons of gravity on himself. Even with his tough body, he felt like he was about to be crushed. He fell faster and faster. The friction with the air left behind a long, fiery tail. He was like a meteor falling from the sky. The ground rushed towards him. The blue ocean disappeared. The cloud, mist, frost, and thunder provinces quickly receded in all directions, leaving only the dragon province. The golden floater turned into golden fish. Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes and locked onto the Emperor Dragon King. The thunderous voice grew louder and louder. In the blink of an eye, it resounded through the surroundings and shook up the space, like the wails of ghosts. "By your Majesty! It's too fast. The Emperor Dragon King can't dodge the collision." A sliver of panic appeared on Lu Xikong's wooden face. He was not wooden by nature. Instead, he had used a technique unique to Moism, the heart of stone, to prevent his mind from being affected by emotions. However, at that moment, the technique almost collapsed. "Then don't dodge. Fire all at once." Zhuo Long roared furiously. He never thought Li Qingshan would be so arrogant, actually attempting to break through the formation from above. He was shocked as well. He powered the golden compass in his hand and gathered the power of the entire formation, forming a seemingly solid golden barrier above him. However, this instead affected the Emperor Dragon King's simultaneous attacks. A defense that focused all of its power definitely could not be one-sided. As for the remaining cannons, it was not easy to lock onto the meteor that had accelerated to the limit. At most, they could only lock it down. Only a handful of them could actually touch the meteor, and they would be torn apart before they could even get close. Although the ministers were all great cultivators, and their attacks were more flexible, the range of their magic treasures was limited. Their minds were also in a state of panic. By the time Li Qingshan entered the attack range, it was already too late. As a result, they could only watch as the meteor fell from the sky. It was clearly a live target, but no one on the ship had any way to counterattack. It seemed like a stupid frontal attack, but it was the best way to break out of this situation. At this moment, no one could stop him. In an instant, the meteor hit the Emperor Dragon King. The golden compass in Zhuolong's hand shattered. The golden barrier suddenly shattered, and with a loud bang, Li Qingshan fell heavily onto the deck. A large hole immediately appeared under his feet. In an instant, the shockwave spread to every corner of the Emperor Dragon King. Cabins collapsed one after another, and billions of wood splinters flew everywhere. The dragon bones twisted and snapped, and the huge Emperor Dragon King was almost broken into two. The wings of the wind god suddenly folded, and the fierce astral wind was like an invisible sword, destroying everything in its path. The ministers and great cultivators bore the brunt. Their protective magic treasures were torn apart by the violent astral wind, and their fragile bodies were instantly chopped into minced meat. Their Yuanying wanted to escape, but it was also sucked into the astral wind and turned into ashes. Only 7 or 8 people survived. In an instant, the glorious and luxurious Emperor Dragon King was almost turned into ruins, and it was falling rapidly. Li Qingshan stood in the ruins, raised his head, stared at Zhuolong, and spat out one word: "Get lost." The great cultivators who had survived the calamity fled without a care for anything else. Floating astronomy. P.S. The final battle of 9 regions is coming. Ask for a monthly ticket. Chapter 1332. Not all of them were cowards. They cultivated for longevity, not out of loyalty and patriotism. Moreover, they had never seen Chuolong not long ago, so there was no loyalty to speak of. If they escaped the battlefield, they might have to face Chuolong's wrath later, but he would not kill them. If they continued to fight with Li Qingshan, only death awaited them. After weighing the pros and cons, it was naturally better to escape as far as possible. Si Long said coldly, "Trash will always be trash." With a cry, sharp eagle claws slashed towards Li Qingshan's face, swift as thunder and sharp as lightning. Li Qingshan did not seem to see his existence and had no intention of dodging. He only stared at Chuolong with his head held high, his right hand opened like a claw, and his killing intent condensed. Although he did not want to kill Gu Yenying's father with his own hands, he would not show mercy in a battle of life and death. "All right, you can go back," Chuolong ordered. The eagle flew into the sky at the critical moment, its sharp claws brushing past Li Qingshan's eyes. If it went any further, it would be a battle of life and death. Chuolong smiled and sighed, "I know you are not willing to go to the human realm. From now on you are free." The eagle turned back into human form, knelt down on one knee, looked at him deeply, then spread its wings and flew away. In an instant, it turned into a black, embedded in the depths of the blue sky. In the past, when he was young, he was accompanied by eagles and wolves, achieving hegemony in the world. Now, when the wolf died, the eagle flew away. Even as a human emperor, there was a trace of loneliness in his heart. But this was the way of cultivation. The Imperial Dragon King was still falling rapidly, splinters were flying everywhere. Chuolong returned to the dragon throne and sat down, still looking down. "Li Qingshan, I have indeed underestimated you. But even if you destroy this broken boat, what can you do to me?" At the same time, he used the broken True Dragon Jade Seal to suppress his inner demons. Under the influence of heaven's will, his inner demons were slowly calming down. And his extraordinary temperament and cultivation were manifested. And to a cultivator, this was real power. "You will know soon." Li Qingshan smiled and operated the small world to recover his demonic aura. On this rapidly falling lone boat, there was a moment of strange silence. At the next moment, Chuolong's eyes flickered as he looked toward the east with a surprised expression. Under the blazing sun, the rock spread its wings and flew 10,000 li. Chuolong didn't expect Sumi Rao's charm technique to fail to capture Gu Yenying. Moreover, he did not expect Gu Yenying to willingly throw herself into this life-risking battle. "I really don't know how you did it. If I had to choose between her and that fox, I would definitely choose her. This is the power of true love. Let me ask you, are you scared?" Gu Yenying heard this from afar and could not help but roll her eyes. She recalled the scene she saw when she flew over Dragon Head Mountain. Under the heaven-climbing vine that connected heaven and earth, the heroes gathered around the Temple of Heaven. Under the leadership of the previous emperor, they worshipped the Chua dragon's body. Thus, he revealed a meaningful smile. Chuolong smiled faintly and did not panic. "Do you think that a fake Kun Peng can threaten a true dragon? You probably don't know. The worship to the heavens has been completed." "What?" Li Qingshan's heart tightened. "The worship to the heavens had already begun when I set off. By the time I returned to Dragon Head Mountain, the outcome had already been decided." Chuolong raised his right hand and spread his fingers as if everything was under his control. "You still want to go back?" Li Qingshan stepped over the broken deck and walked toward Chuolong step by step. Chuolong shook his head with a mocking expression. "You want to stop me? You don't think I will give you a chance to win, do you? I told you my plan so that you can have a chance to ruin it, unless you can reverse the flow of time." "What if I really can?" Li Qingshan glanced at Gu Yenying. No matter how fast Chuolong's yang spirit was, it could not be faster than Kun Peng. If he could reach Dragon Head Mountain first, Chuolong followed Li Qingshan's gaze and glanced at him. "You might as well make it a little clearer. I've already reforged the Frost Province cauldron 3 days ago. I've carefully calculated the date of the wedding. although it was only a substitute. But it's enough to make up for the flaws of the 9 cauldrons. Do you know the effect of combining the 9 cauldrons into one? Even if you fall from the sky 100 times, you still won't be able to break the boundary of the 9 regions of the Dragon Head Mountain, let alone her. He simply stood up from the throne and was almost face to face with Li Qingshan. His golden eyes rolled, as if he was observing the expression of the loser. However, to his disappointment, he did not see any expression of frustration or discouragement. Admit it, no matter how many tricks you played in Jasper Palace, it was all in vain. From the beginning to the end, the only one who could threaten me was Mi Rao. You saved me at the most critical moment. Don't you think it's ironic? Cut the crap, eat my fist. Li Qingshan's fist punched through Zhuolong's chest, but he did not look happy at all. It was Zhuolong who had taken the initiative to change the form of his yang spirit, opening a big hole in his chest. He had completely surpassed the limits of the human body. Even in close combat, he had a myriad of tricks up his sleeves. The shadow of the Kunpeng shrouded over him, and the shattered Emperor Dragon King also fell to the ground. Try to stop me. Boom, Zhuolong said. The core furnace of the Emperor Dragon King exploded, instantly releasing a destructive pure energy that devoured everything around it. Li Qingshan had no choice but to spread his wings and fly high to avoid the sharp edge. He lost track of Zhuolong. Mystic light illuminates all. Pieces of mystic armor illuminated 1,000 miles. He immediately discovered that Zhuolong had dived deep into the ground and was flying towards Dragon Head Mountain at an extremely fast speed. Li Qingshan had used this move to escape more than once, but he was somewhat helpless at this time. He could not keep up with Zhuolong's speed, and Gu Yenying could not break through the millions of tons of earth and stone to pull Zhuolong out. It was very difficult for cultivators to determine life and death. Who could stop the yang spirit from escaping? What should we do? Luo Ho Xiaoming released the slingshot and did not force himself to shoot. Li Qingshan was speechless for a moment. Since even Luo Ho Xiaoming had asked this question, it had already explained his attitude and judgment. At this time, leaving was already the best choice. They would fight to a draw, and it could even be said that they had a slight advantage. Once Zhuolong completed the sacrifice, the difference in strength between the two sides would be too great to make up for. No matter how hard he tried, it would be futile, and he might even risk his life. However, he was really unwilling to choose to retreat. This battle did not only concern himself. Gu Yenying suddenly said, "Let's go to Dragon Head Mountain. As for the sacrifice, Little Anne and I already have a plan to deal with it." Li Qingshan was greatly surprised. He and Luo Ho Xiaoming looked at each other in dismay. When did they become so close? Little Anne nodded slightly and grunted. Gu Yenying said with a smile, "It's just some schemes that can't be put on the table. There's no guarantee of success. In order to prevent Zhuolong from sensing it, more and more people know about it. But now it seems to be quite effective. Do you still remember my eldest disciple?" Chapter 1333. Li Qingshan frowned. There weren't many people or things that could make him frown now, but Qian Rongji was always the number one. Honestly speaking, there wasn't any deep hatred worth mentioning, but he instinctively felt disgusted. But he had to admit that after hearing this name, he inexplicably had more confidence in Gu Yenying's plan, but he also felt very uncomfortable. Luo Ho Xiaoming was curious. "Who are you talking about?" "Let's wait until Mount Dragon Head." The Kunpeng spread its wings and swept Li Qingshan and the others into the wind, flying towards the Dragon Head Mountain with a whistling sound. Li Qingshan said, "She's just a golden core cultivator." A few months ago, she had already undergone her 3rd heavenly tribulation. He's just a nascent soul cultivator. Li Qingshan had killed countless people of this level. Now, with just a glare, he might be able to scare 2 cowards to death. However, he was not surprised by the speed of Qian Rongji's cultivation. That eldest disciple of mine is the reincarnation of a celestial being. He controls the heaven-climbing vine that connects the mortal realm and the 9 provinces. The reincarnation of a celestial being, could it be? An idea flashed through Li Qingshan's mind. He thought of a reincarnated celestial being named Chu Tian, and later changed to Lin Xian. In that case, it made sense that Qian Rongji's cultivation speed had increased greatly. Immediately, another thought popped into his mind. Lin Xian had probably fallen into her hands as well. The sky-climbing vine did not belong to the 9 states, so it must have been a pawn arranged by the Chua dragon to open up the path between the 9 states and the human world. That person should have been Chu Tian, but he foolishly got entangled with her and almost lost his life. Later, he turned into Lin Xian, but it seemed that not only did he not succeed in his revenge, but he was also replaced. Gu Yenying said, "That's it?" Li Qingshan sneered and said, "So to say, if it wasn't for her, I would have killed him. The Gui Long cannot descend." Of course, he also knew that his words were somewhat unreasonable. On the other hand, if not for her, the Hui Long would have descended long ago. This was also why she was so strange. Ordinary people would carefully keep such a rare treasure a secret. Why would she take the initiative to send herself to his doorstep and draw out an extremely powerful enemy? As long as Chua Long sensed anything, she would die without a burial. It was like a greedy snake that was filled with crazed malice and swallowed everything it could, completely disregarding whether it would swell to death or not. Some people live to set the world on fire. Gu Yenying shrugged. Even a natural disaster like Su Minrao, who possessed unbelievably great power, could not do anything to her. He still had a reverent heart and placed self-preservation as his top priority. However, perhaps it was precisely because of her noble birth and extensive knowledge that she had many misgivings. Luo Ho Xiaoming became even more curious. If that's the case, she's really suitable to cultivate in the devil's domain. Maybe she'll become the chosen one. Sigh. There are so many lunatics in this world. He glanced at Gu Yenying, Li Qingshan, and Little N. No wonder he felt that he was becoming more and more normal. The Kuan Peng spread its wings for thousands of miles. As they spoke, Mount Dragonhead was right in front of them. They were even faster than the Hui Long. Flying underground was indeed safe. It was not as carefree as flying in the sky. Hundreds of great cultivators and dozens of monster kings gathered at the peak of the mountain. They were worshipping the heaven altar. When they saw the Kunpeng's huge figure, their expressions changed. Did the Hui Long lose? Continue worshipping the heavens, don't be distracted, the previous emperor of Great Xia ordered. He also felt his mind tense up. At this moment, a golden light swept past the ground. Dragon roars sounded from the foot of the mountain. The Hui Long rushed out of the ground and flew towards the peak. Li Qingshan leaped forward. He held the 9 heaven life soil tightly in his right hand and punched out. There was no explosion, no destruction. His fist was blocked by an invisible barrier. Layers of ripples appeared in the void, but they instantly disappeared. He was unable to cause any damage. Around the heaven altar, 9 cauldrons were arranged. They were the 9 continent cauldrons formed by combining the world god seal. Not only was the Shuang Prefecture cauldron reforged, but even the huge cauldron that the Banyan Tree King had devoured back then was reforged. 9 pillars of light shot out from the 9 cauldrons, stirring up the wind and clouds and rushing into the sky. They surrounded the sky-climbing vine in the middle, like a towering pillar that held up the sky. They also resonated with each other, their auras connected, forming an indestructible whole. The 9-continent barrier. Li Qingshan's heart sank. This was no longer a cultivator's array formation. Instead, it was a heaven and earth array formation that condensed the laws of this world. If he wanted to break this barrier, he would have to defeat this world. Very good, you really came. Then you shall die here. The Hui Long smiled at Li Qingshan. He still had the confident expression of having everything under control, but there was also a hint of smugness of victory. At this stage, the worshipping of the heavens had actually been completed. The god seal that was born from heaven and earth was the bridge between all living beings and the world. The 9 cauldrons that were forged by the god seal were even more important to the country. Without the 9 cauldrons, no matter how many people's hearts he had won, it would all be in vain. He would not be able to turn it into real power, and he would not be able to completely break the restraints of the laws of heaven and earth, even if he was fighting against the Devil King that was going to destroy the world. Only by gathering the hearts of all living beings and making his will listen to the heavens, reversing the will of the heavens, would he be able to achieve the oneness of heaven and human, allowing him to unleash the real power of the human sovereign. No, not only that, the power he unleashed in this world would be 10 times or even 100 times stronger than in the human realm, completely crushing Li Qingshan and the others. Under everyone's gaze, the Hui Long passed by the crowd and ascended the heaven altar. In an instant, the inner demons disappeared without a trace. The will of all living beings was enough to eliminate any distracting thoughts, and the will of the heavens made him extremely calm, no longer having any emotional fluctuations. He was the master of the world, the son of heaven. There was no need for him to worry about anything, and everything would follow his will. Li Qingshan gazed into the distance, but he did not see any trace of Qian Rongji. Where had she run off to? Surely she hadn't run away in fright. Coincidentally, the same question surged in the heart of the Hui Long suddenly. A strong sense of unease pierced his heart like a sharp arrow. There was no reason, no explanation. That was the heavenly perception, and it was also the perception that he, as the human sovereign, had. Ever since he came to this world, he had placed almost all of his attention on Li Qingshan, thinking day and night about how to deal with him. At other times, he was also extremely busy. Reforging the cauldrons of the 9 states and understanding the laws of heaven and earth were all extremely exhausting things. He also had to investigate a group of officials and think about the plans after returning to the human realm. Unknowingly, he had neglected the most important person. It was because that person had helped him complete his great undertaking, opening up the path between the 9 states and the human realm. It was because that person's cultivation was far below his, and she spent most of her time cultivating. Perhaps it was also because of the will of the heavens that had been blinding his senses, and it was only at this moment that he regained some clarity. She, who should be guarding the heaven altar and controlling the sky-climbing vine, where is she now? An even more terrifying thought appeared. Until this moment, he could not sense the body of the true dragon, which was very close to him. Even though the yang spirit had left its body, it still had a subtle connection with the physical body. Entering the fine jade palace and raising the boundary of the 9 states would affect this connection, but the current situation was too strange. He no longer cared about the bearing of the human sovereign, and pounced on his true dragon body on the dragon throne. The moment his fingertips touched the physical body, it collapsed. It was just an empty shell, and inside it were densely packed vines that writhed like thousands of small snakes. Chapter 1334. The sun was high up in the sky, and the sky was clear. On the peak of the mountains, there was dead silence around the altar. All kinds of expressions froze on their faces, as if they were funny masks. Chua Long was dumbfounded. To him, losing his physical body was an unbearable loss. Even if it was just a fragile mortal body, it was still crucial to his cultivation. Moreover, it was the body of a true dragon that he had painstakingly cultivated. He did not leave his physical body here without any preparation. Instead, he had prepared all kinds of defensive measures. Even if Li Qingshan suddenly attacked him, he would not be injured in the slightest. However, he had neglected the sky-climbing vine that could pierce through the void. It pierced through all his defenses inch by inch, draining all his blood essence bit by bit. The green and tender vine weaved to form a woman's face. She said, "Your Majesty, you're back? Look at your expression now. It's so funny. Did something bad happen to you?" She didn't leave. Gu Yenying was slightly surprised. After doing such a thing, not only did she not run away, she even dared to provoke Chua Long. It was as if she was going to face Chua Long's fury alone. That's Qian Rongji. Interesting indeed. Luoho Xiaoming was very interested. Taking advantage of the fact that Chua Long was in Jasper Jade Palace and had lost his connection to his physical body, it was not a big deal for him to set him up. To dare to provoke him like this, one must have extraordinary courage. In the cultivation world, there was a strict hierarchy. Those who were inferior would instinctively fear those who were superior. Even if they were undefeatable, they would still tremble in fear. And she should know very well that one sky-climbing vine was not enough to protect her life. A sharp laughter filled with malice startled Chuolong. With a flash of golden light, it was as sharp as a sword and cut through his face. He shouted angrily, "Chen Rongji, what did you do?" As if to answer his question, there were exclamations around the altar. The former great Xia emperor felt a pain in his foot. It was so slight that it was hard to notice. However, it pierced through his protective artifact and strong body. It penetrated deep into his soul and approached his nascent soul. In an instant, he was like a balloon that had been pierced by a needle. His essence, qi, and spirit surged out uncontrollably from the needle hole. He felt an unprecedented terror. As far as the eye could see, thousands of vines drilled out from the ground. They stretched out, twisted, entangled, and penetrated like a group of snakes dancing wildly. Among them were many horrified faces. It turned out that the vines had already covered the ground around the Temple of Heaven. This was no longer a solemn place for worshipping the heavens, but a terrible trap. To a certain extent, Chuolong was the one who had set this trap. Chu Tian was born with the sky-climbing vine, and when it was taken away by Chen Rongji, it only grew into a bonsai after more than 20 years. Of course, it was because most of the pure spiritual energy extracted from the mortal realm was used by him for cultivation. However, it also showed how much resources the sky-climbing vine needed. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, it would even seem a little useless. If not for the 5,000 years of preparation of the Great Xia dynasty, it would have taken almost all the resources of the country to irrigate it. Even after another 1,000 years, it wouldn't be able to grow to such an extent. In fact, it might even stagnate. No matter how pure the extracted spiritual energy was, it was still limited. This strange grass that could penetrate the boundaries and connect to the world, once it grew up, it would definitely not be a safe, harmless flower for people to enjoy. Fresh blood splattered, and the shadow cloud crane king resolutely cut off its legs. With a crane cry, it spread its wings and soared into the sky. Just as it flew into the air, a vine pierced through the void. It stabbed into his chest. King Donglu activated the long sword at his waist, and the sharp light was like a clear pool of water. One look and it was obvious that it was not an ordinary magic treasure. The sword slashed at the vine, but the blade smoothly passed through it, not hurting it at all. The existence of the sky-climbing vine was between real and fake. Chuolong had to rely on his yang spirit evil qi to cut through it. Cultivators, however, did not have such a method. Even a thin vine could not be torn apart, nor could it be cut. Swords and magic treasures could not touch it, and supernatural powers and spells could not harm it. Once those powerful cultivators fell into its claws and teeth, they would never be able to escape. Unknowingly, the vines had already covered the sky, wanting to capture all the people and demons participating in the worshipping. Chuolong actually did not care about the life and death of these people. Even his own descendants were separated by many generations. He focused all his attention on the 9 cauldrons, which were the key to this worshipping. Even if he lost his physical body, the yang spirit could still complete the last step of the worshipping. However, the cruel reality did not leave him even the last bit of luck. The pillars of light quickly dimmed, and the vine threads intertwined in the cauldron, already piercing through the body of the cauldron, just for this moment. The wishes of all living beings gathered along the vine threads towards the main trunk of the sky-climbing vine. There was a vague human figure in it, frantically stealing the fruits of victory of this worshipping. The so-called hearts of all living beings were always used by ambitious people. The mysteries and unpredictability of the human heart far surpassed the will of the heavens. Chuolong felt dizzy, and the feeling of being one with heaven was gradually leaving him. He deeply felt the feelings of the Banyan Tree King that day. All the plans and schemes had turned into nothing at the moment when they were about to see the light of day. It was as if he was only one step away from the top of the mountain, but had stepped into an abyss. This strong sense of loss was enough to drive him crazy. Although he did not go crazy, the demons in his heart were burning. Unwillingness, regret, resentment, sorrow, all kinds of negative emotions came one after another. Now, I am the son of destiny, the master of all living beings. All of you go to hell. The heaven-climbing vine was like a twisting, green snake. Qianrongji's mad laughter filled up the entire Dragon's Head mountain. Great cultivators with extraordinary talent, noble members of the imperial family, and demon kings who dominated the world all prostrated themselves beneath her feet, struggling painfully. Li Qingshan frowned, recalling the scene many years ago. However, at that time, it was just a small hill, but now it was the peak of the entire 9 states. Even the high and mighty human emperor had been poisoned by it and suffered heavy losses. Bitch, do you think I can't kill you just because you hide in the sky-climbing vine? Chua Long roared angrily, and like a knife, he cut open the main trunk of the sky-climbing vine. Although the sky-climbing vine was terrifying, in the face of a stronger power, it was as weak as a normal plant. He easily grabbed Qianrongji, who was hiding inside, and felt a familiar aura from her body. It was his true dragon bloodline. Because he could not digest it, 2 dragon horns protruded from the top of his head, and his body was covered in scales. However, his eyes, rather than dragon eyes, were more like snake eyes, staring at Chua Long cruelly. He became even more furious, and golden light flashed in his eyes. Her flesh and blood flew everywhere, and in the blink of an eye, only a bloody human figure was left. Many beautiful snakes crawled out of it, looking extremely ugly. Little and was expressionless, and he held the hilt of his sword tightly. Li Qingshan sighed in his heart. He felt that children were getting harder to understand as they grew up. Although he did not like Qianrongji, he was still a person who could distinguish between kindness and hatred, and would not leave her to die. However, even without the barrier of the 9 states, they could not take her from Chua Long. However, her laughter did not stop for a moment. Instead, it became even more joyful, and she urged, "Hurry up, kill me. I have the true dragon bloodline. This little injury is nothing." Her voice was low, like a snake hissing. "If you kill me, this sky-climbing vine will wither, and you will not be able to return to the human realm, and you will be strongly rejected by this world. If you kill me, the true dragon son of heaven, you will be regarded as an enemy by the heavenly will, and the situation will be even more worrying. You will let Li Qingshan take advantage of it." The sky-climbing vine played a similar role to the sky-reaching ghost tower, and both could allow existences beyond the limits of this world to come to the 9 states. However, Emperor Li could not leave the sky-reaching ghost tower, while Chua Long used all kinds of methods and the advantage of being born in this world to almost turn this world into his own garden. However, Qianrongji was equivalent to replacing Chua Long to complete the sacrifice and become the true son of heaven. Even if she did not have much power to use, she was still blessed by the heavenly will, and killing her would be retribution. Chua Long trembled all over. He naturally understood this, and so he did not kill her. On the contrary, his heart was even more depressed than just now, and he almost spat out blood. The demons in his heart became more and more intense, and there were signs of chi deviation. What was more frightening was that the heavenly will began to change, and his power was also suppressed. If this continued, it did not mean that he would explode and die when he fought with Li Qingshan and the others, and his soul would be destroyed. "How dare a bitch like you swallow my flesh and ruin my great plan? You took mine, give it back to me." With a trace of clarity in his mind, he threw his yang spirit into Qianrongji's body. As long as he succeeded in taking her body, he would still be the true dragon son of heaven, and all his mistakes would be corrected. To be continued. Chapter 1335. Chua Long threw all of his yang spirit into Qianrongji's body. The process of possession was very smooth. Even the heavenly will couldn't stop him at all. That bitch dared to use the sky-climbing vine to devour my flesh and blood, but she couldn't digest it at all. She thought that she could threaten me with the mandate of heaven, but she didn't know that all living beings were calling my name. She was so stupid that she dug her own grave. As if a king had returned, he encountered no resistance wherever he went. Soon he reached the capital of the kingdom. All that was left was to kill the thief who had stolen the kingdom. This process took less than a breath of time. The golden dragon chi permeated every inch of her flesh and blood, every bone, and every meridian. It was as if the emperor's army had restored the world, and in the end, there was only one lonely city left, her nascent soul, but it was not in the shape of a baby, but a coquettish poisonous snake. The snake's head bit the snake's tail, forming a ring as if it wanted to devour her. Chua Long prided himself on his vast knowledge, yet he'd never seen such a strange-looking nascent soul. When he thought about how it was all thanks to him that she was able to overcome the third heavenly tribulation so quickly, he became even more furious in his heart, and he wished for nothing more than to crush her immediately. This was undoubtedly the fastest way to seize her body. But that would be equivalent to him killing her with his own hands. She now had the mandate of heaven and the protection of all living beings. No matter who killed her, they would suffer a violent backlash. Not only would he lose the mandate of heaven, but his body would also be on the verge of collapse. The sky-climbing vine would also not immediately accept him as its new master. Li Qingshan and the others were eyeing him covetously outside. This was a result he couldn't bear. Only by devouring and digesting her nascent soul could he replace her. The hell snake glanced at him. There was no fear in its eyes, only coldness and a trace of unconcealable madness. Chua Long was afraid that she would go crazy and destroy her nascent soul, so his young spirit immediately gathered like 1,000,000 troops. Clad in golden armor, he killed his way into the capital. At this moment, the hell snake began to spin, forming a large vortex in the center, sucking in Chua Long's yang spirit. With a change of light and shadow, Chua Long's yang spirit condensed into a human form. Stepping on a muddy swamp, Shao Chun looked around in bewilderment. Under the hazy sky, countless venomous snakes were wriggling and rolling in the swamp, devouring each other, and hissing sounds lingered in the ears, causing one's hair to stand on end. Viper hell! How could Chua Long not have heard of the Naraka realm's hell of venomous snakes? He was even more familiar with the illustrations of the Naraka Sutra, but it was not enough to dispel his current shock. Or it could be said that it was precisely because he was clear that he couldn't understand. She actually internalized the venomous snake hell into her nascent soul. Ordinary legalist disciples borrowed the power of hell. Some idiots who were eager for quick success would inflict hellish torture on themselves in order to hone their will and purify their soul, but most of them died of madness. However, compared to her, those people were all normal people. In order to surpass the constraints of talent, they had no choice but to do so. When they truly reached her level, they would still work hard to become prison guards. After all, no one pursued immortality just to endure the pain of hell. She had practically thrown herself into the depths of hell. No matter where she was, it was equivalent to a poisonous snake hell. Day and night, without rest, without a moment of rest. Once he ascended, he would immediately fall into the viper hell. It was no wonder that she could still smile even after being cut into 1,000 pieces. Compared to this kind of pain, no matter what kind of torture one's physical body suffered, it would not be able to withstand it. These were all insignificant matters. Being killed was simply a form of relief. This lunatic! Chua Long gritted his teeth. This way, if he wanted to devour her nascent soul, he would have to bear the burden of this viper hell in her place. Even if he was a dignified human sovereign, he could not easily cut off his connection with the hell realm. Quick, take this opportunity to kill him. Luo Ho Xiaoming pulled the slingshot, and the sky darkened. The pebble pierced through the boundary of the 9 states, leaving behind a black spiral. The power contained in the 9 cauldrons was almost completely drained by the sky-climbing vine. After suffering such a blow, it could no longer sustain itself. The frost state cauldron that had been forged not long ago shattered with a loud bang, and the boundary of the 9 states disappeared. After devouring a group of cultivators and monster kings, the sky-climbing vine continued to grow. It was like a green net, almost completely enveloping the peak of the mountain. Li Qingshan brandished the fading flower saber of the end of the path, and in the blink of an eye, flower-like saber patterns covered his body. He became one with the saber, and turned into a whirling and blooming saber light. Everywhere it passed, the vines broke, and a path was opened. When he arrived in front of Qian Rongji, he stopped, and the sharp blade stopped above her head. Luo Ho Xiaoming urged, I know what you are thinking. Her nascent soul can't defeat the yang spirit. Once the turtle dragon succeeds in taking over her body, all our previous efforts will be in vain. Let me do it. Little and walked out from behind Li Qingshan. She was as quiet as his shadow. She slowly waved the Buddha-slaying sword in her hand and sighed in her heart. At this time, this sword was more effective than the fading flower saber of the end. Li Qingshan held her wrist, shook his head gently, and said with a smile, It's rare to see someone you don't want to kill. Besides, I don't want to bear the bad reputation of biting the hand that feeds me. What kind of man am I to ask you to help me kill someone? If all my previous efforts are in vain, then so be it. I will kill him with my own hands. He had always been clear about gratitude and grudges. No matter how much he hated Qian Rongji, she had helped him a lot this time. He would never take advantage of her and kill her at this time. Luo Ho Xiaoming wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He also felt a little strange in his heart. Logically speaking, with the gap between the yang spirit and the nascent soul, the possession could be completed in an instant. This woman named Qian Rongji had no chance of winning at all. However, several breaths had passed, and she was still in a stalemate. Was it because of the blessing of heaven? Gu Yenying said with a smile, Both of you have a point. My disciple has always been persevering and sinister. Since she dared to stay here to face the turtle dragon, she must have something to rely on. It won't be so easy for her to be taken over, but I don't think she has any chance of winning. Once the turtle dragon succeeds in taking over, it will be troublesome. Why don't we help her and destroy the turtle dragon in her body? If it really doesn't work, we will have done our best. When the turtle dragon succeeds in taking over, we will strike first and gain the upper hand. Good idea. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. Even if they could defeat the turtle dragon, it would be extremely difficult to kill him. This was a good opportunity. The four of them stood around Qian Rongji. The heaven-climbing vines coiled around them in all directions, but they did not extend towards them. However, the heaven-climbing vines had lost control, so they only had the instinct to entangle and devour. They were prepared for this. Little and waved his hand, and the samadhi flames of white bone burned fiercely, enveloping them all in flames. The vines shrank as soon as they came into contact with them, no longer approaching them. He then tossed the abandoned immortal sword, and a zigzagged sword light pierced through the clouds, cutting off the top of the heaven-climbing vines. In an instant, the 9 provinces and the human realm were separated once again. Do it. Li Qingshan slapped his palm on the top of Qian Rongji's head. The spirit turtle appeared indistinctly, pressing down fiercely. Gu Yenying manifested the hot wind hell, and hot wind surged into Qian Rongji's body. Chapter 1336. Looking at the hell of poisonous snakes, Chua Long knew that it was not good. The time it took to devour a Yuanying was completely different from that of such a small hell. With the absolute advantage of his yang spirit, the former only needed a moment, and the rest was nothing more than a slow digestion. The latter was not so simple. Could it be that he had been tricked by this bitch again? He hesitated for a moment. The boundary of the 9 regions could not hold for too long. If he could not succeed in the possession as soon as possible, and Li Qingshan and the others broke in, he would be caught like a turtle in a jar. However, if he gave up just like that, he was absolutely unwilling. Moreover, without the protection of the boundary of the 9 regions, the sky-climbing vine would definitely not be able to resist the destruction of Li Qingshan and the others. Thinking of this, he suddenly stopped the process of possession. Instead, he shrank all the power of the yang spirit and quietly explored the situation outside. A poisonous snake wriggled in the swamp, and its black and red intertwined scales were particularly bright. It said in human language, "Hiss, Your Majesty is really good at scheming." Chua Long looked at her coldly. "How dare I compare with you? You want them to kill me?" The poisonous snake spat out its bright red tongue, hissing as if it was laughing strangely. It turned out that Chua Long knew that he could not succeed in the possession in a short time, so he simply beat her at her own game. If Li Qingshan and the others thought that he was in the process of possession and mercilessly killed him, it would be tantamount to killing the Son of Heaven with their own hands. His yang spirit was just hiding here, so it would not be harmed at all. He could also take advantage of the fact that they were suffering from the backlash of the mandate of heaven to launch a surprise attack. Hearing this, his heart trembled. Not only had he sealed all the senses of this bitch, but she could even self-destruct her yuanying. However, she could guess his plan at once, and there was no trace of fear at all. This kind of scheming and temperament was really rare, and he was even more worried that she had already expected this. Why don't you guess? Will they betray you? Hiss, I am the Son of Heaven, and I have the protection of the mandate of heaven. Look at me, don't I look like a dragon? The poisonous snake twisted its body, imitating Chuolong's posture of flying into the air, which was really funny and disgusting. The mandate of heaven? Chuolong's anger was almost uncontrollable. His brows furrowed. My inner demons are getting more and more serious. I can't let this bitch provoke me anymore. Right at this moment, the blazing blade light whizzed over. Seeing that his plan was about to succeed, he secretly gathered all his strength, preparing to give Li Qingshan a fatal blow when he killed Qian Rongji. Feeling indignant, he thought, just like what the information says, that saber is an Azura divine weapon with a weapon soul. It is comparable to my imperial dragon seal. If I eat this saber, my body will be destroyed. It's a pity that apart from my natal magic treasure, I can't bring any other magic treasures to the lower realm. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a passive position. Forget it, I'll settle this with you. However, the development of the matter disappointed him. Li Qingshan stopped at the last moment. Did he see through my plan? After listening to Li Qingshan's words, he was suddenly enlightened. However, he became even angrier. You're a sinful evildoer. How dare you put on an act and pretend to be righteous at this time? He then listened to Gu Yenying's words. He immediately made a decision, and his yang spirit shrank rapidly. It turned into a golden sun, and its light shone through the poisonous snake hell. Tens of thousands of venomous snakes looked up, their colorful bodies dyed golden. Bush, bush, bush. Thousands of poisonous snakes shot toward the sun like arrows, and the entire poisonous snake hell became glorious. Chuolong began to take over the body. In the face of such absolute power, Qian Rongji could not resist it even if she had 1,000 tricks up her sleeves. However, she let out hysterical laughter. Her laughter seemed to open the gates of hell. More poisonous snakes surged out from the depths of the swamp, surging like a tide. They shot toward the sun high above like moths to a flame. Chuolong suffered the pain of being bitten by thousands of snakes. His resentment and anger could not be described in words. There was also a deep sorrow and shame. How could a dignified human emperor fall into such a situation? If this went on, before anyone came to kill him, he would immediately be attacked by his inner demons and die of qi deviation. At this moment of life and death, Chuolong suddenly had a glimmer of understanding. This trip to the 9 regions was his tribulation. The so-called tribulation was not only the heavenly tribulation. There was also the invasion of the inner demons, and the internal disorder would cause him to lose his mind and enter qi deviation. Then there was the pull of fate, and he would kill with a borrowed knife. When he met a strong enemy, he would use weapons. These two types of tribulations often intertwined with each other. The more chaotic the heart, the more injuries the body would suffer. Both internal and external attacks would destroy the body and heart. Even a strong cultivator would die. Becoming a celestial being was something that defied the heavens. The higher one's cultivation, the heavier the tribulation. Moreover, it happened according to the situation, and there was no way to guard against it. It caused countless cultivators to die. However, troubles were also bodhi, and tribulations were also opportunities. A cultivator's Tao heart was also honed through these many tribulations. Chuolong used this glimmer of understanding to reflect on himself. I came to the lower realm this time because of my strong desire, and I was confused. My greed was hindered by Li Qingshan. My pride was taken advantage of by Qian Rongji. That was why I met with so many tribulations. My courtship failed, and my sacrifice to the heavens failed. I lost my physical body and suffered the torture of this hell. Now, I'm almost in danger of dying. This is unimaginable before the lower realm. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly, but it immediately turned into determination. How could this life of hard cultivation be in vain? At this moment, hot wind surged in. It was Gu Yenying who had activated the hot wind hell, adding another layer of hell torture. Darkness suddenly enveloped him, swallowing all the golden light. He gritted his teeth and used the pain to suppress his inner demons. He felt a burst of clarity, and his yang spirit returned to its human form. He opened his mouth and let out a dragon roar. The golden light of the yang spirit became brighter and brighter, tearing all the darkness apart. He completely opened his mind and accepted this poisonous snake hell. The speed of refining the nascent soul was even higher. Even if the sky-climbing vine was cut off by the abandoned immortal sword and the connection between the 9 regions and the mortal Tao was broken, it didn't shake his resolve at all. Instead, he divided his attention into 3 tasks. While refining the nascent soul, he mobilized part of the will of all living beings to resist the rejection of the laws of heaven and earth. He also paid attention to the movements of Li Qingshan and the others. He could now control part of Qian Rongji's body to ensure that he would have the power to fight at a critical moment. As the saying goes, heaven never bars one's way. The pain of hell was where the glimmer of hope lay. The Ouroboros that had formed a ring was quickly dyed by the golden light. Suddenly, bursts of clear light sprinkled down, and the spirit turtle descended from the sky with the momentum of suppressing everything. Chua Long looked up, and his eyes shot out rays of light, resisting the spirit turtle. The bright golden light seemed to want to taint the spirit turtle as well. After a few seconds, the clear light dimmed and the spirit turtle retreated. I can't handle it. Li Qingshan took a step back, feeling dizzy. The spirit turtle formed by his divine sense was almost destroyed. This yang spirit was simply shamelessly strong. Luo Ho Xiaoming frowned and said, "The yang spirit is not only the condensation of the soul's will, but also contains real power. We can't beat it with our divine sense alone. I thought that disrupting his mind would have some effect when he was possessed, but I didn't expect that." Gu Yenying said, "Cut the crap. Kill him." Li Qingshan didn't hesitate and signaled Little and to use the Buddha-slaying sword. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before Qian Rongji's body would be taken over. Killing her might even force Chua Long out. Chua Long projected this scene in the sky above the Viper Hell. "See? This is your end." He tried to shake Qian Rongji's will. At the same time, he was on full alert, ready to break out at any time. He believed that even if she had a desire to live, even if it was just to take revenge on Li Qingshan and the others, she would obediently cooperate with him. I will live in your body forever until you die." Qian Rongji's laughter became more and more deranged. Instead, she tried her best to fight for control of her body. Chua Long clearly felt a trace of relief from the depths of her soul. He couldn't help but frown and say, "This crazy woman." Little and said softly, "Qingyan, I want to try again." Li Qingshan was slightly taken aback, but he nodded and said, "Okay." Little and took out a sword from his sleeve and shook it lightly. It was rectangular and as thin as a cicada's wing. It turned out to be a kasaya, but it wasn't red. Instead, it was pale white, and it was divided into pieces by black threads. The buckles weren't made of gold or jade, but white bone. Apart from that, it didn't look any different from an ordinary kasaya. However, it gave off the feeling of a burial cloth that had been used to bury countless dead people. Even if all the bloodstains and stains were washed away, the filth and blasphemy couldn't be concealed. This was the white bone magic tool Little and had recently forged, the 3 burial Dharma robe. It pounced on Chua Long like a pale white bird. Chua Long felt a hint of uneasiness in his heart. He suddenly moved. He controlled Qian Rongji's body, and with a push of his legs, he soared into the sky. Chapter 1337. Li Qingshan's pupils constricted as he shouted, "Get back here!" Activating his earth force field, he grabbed hold of the Hui Long in midair and pulled him back. Li Qingshan immediately sensed that something was wrong. The other party did not struggle at all, and his speed was shockingly fast. He was like a meteor crashing toward him. Li Qingshan only had time to raise his arms and make a defensive stance before he felt a great force slam into his body. With a crack, his arm bones broke at the same time, and half of his body was smashed into the mountain rocks. This was similar to how he had fallen from the sky to forcefully break the Imperial Dragon King's technique. Moreover, it was giving him a taste of his own medicine. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and looked over. He saw that the bloody human figure was glowing with a domineering aura. A pair of golden dragon eyes looked down at Li Qingshan. There was no longer any anger or hatred in them, only a coldness like gold that could withstand raging flames. The world darkened. Bang! Hui Long was sent flying, his chest caved in deeply. There was a spinning rock in it, and his back bulged up, almost pierced through. As it turned out, the moment Hui Long moved, Luo Ho Xiaoming had already drawn his slingshot and locked onto his body. It was as if he had already predicted his counterattack and attacked the instant he clashed with Li Qingshan. However, there was no joy in Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes. He keenly noticed that Hui Long's chest was glowing with a faint golden light. Those were golden dragon scales that spread rapidly around his body like ripples of light. In the blink of an eye, they covered his entire body. A pair of dragon horns pierced through his forehead, showing off his unique true dragon bloodline in this world. Little and chanted the scripture silently. The three-burial Dharma robe expanded in the wind, spanning hundreds of feet, and covered Hui Long with an earth-shattering momentum. Hui Long twisted his body in midair, his 5 fingers turned into a dragon claw and grabbed at Little N. This grab was like a cloud dragon stretching out its claw. It was ethereal and not sharp, but it contained endless profundities. Li Qingshan's expression changed drastically, and he made a grabbing motion as well. Demonic ape flight. Si Long's body froze and his dragon claw had already reached down. With a loud rumble, the place where Little N was standing. Suddenly, a deep pit with a circumference of 1,000 feet appeared. Large pieces of the mountain rocks were almost turned into powder. Not even a single piece of rock flew out. There was only an expanding white dust mist. Gu Yenying grabbed Little N and flew into the sky. She saw a clear claw mark on the mountain peak, and a trace of shock flashed across her face. Was this the true power of the Hui Long? This exchange was completed in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. From the moment the Hui dragon soared into the sky to when Gu Yenying saved Little N. It was only the blink of an eye, but it contained great danger. Chua Long spread his arms and said with his head held high, "I am the Son of Heaven, the Emperor of 9 regions." His voice was sonorous, like the sound of metal and stone, reverberating between heaven and earth. A faint clamor sounded from all directions, as if all living things were responding to him. As soon as he said that, the Son of Heaven changed, and all laws followed. The sky-climbing vine that was severed connected to the void again. It connected to the mortal realm. The three-burial Dharma robe was supported by the surging dragon chi, but it couldn't envelop everything. "Qingshan, don't let him have a chance to breathe," Luo Ho Xiaoming said. He pulled the slingshot again and aimed at the Hui Long in the sky. Suddenly, he leaped up, and several vines appeared under his feet. The vines almost pierced through his feet. While he was in the air, thousands of vines appeared from the void again and tried to entangle him. All of a sudden, he had no room to dodge. It was very different from when he was uncontrolled just now. As the son of Azura, Luo Ho Xiaoming was not afraid of the sky-climbing vine like other grand cultivators. Even if he was caught, he wouldn't be in mortal danger. But he couldn't let the sky-climbing vine devour essence chi. Under such circumstances, it couldn't threaten the Hui Long at all. The Hui Long had already taken control of a part of the sky-climbing vine from Qian Rongji. Once he devoured Qian Rongji and took back the Son of Heaven, there would be no more suspense in this battle. Now, apart from Li Qingshan, no one could face the Hui Long's attack head-on, not even himself. "I'm a dragon slayer," Li Qingshan roared. The blood-red saber radiance pierced through the sky, challenging the majesty of a sovereign. World domination. With a thought from the Hui Long, the 8 cauldrons moved at the same time. They expanded against the wind and soared into the sky, surrounding him like a steel fortress. Li Qingshan saw that the Shuangzhou cauldron was missing, revealing a flaw. He merged with the saber and charged into the fortress. However, the Hui Long wasn't among them. The 8 cauldrons pressed down on him like 8 mountains. The flames in Little Anne's eyes burned fiercely. Her slender fingers moved continuously, activating the abandoned immortal sword, the skull prayer beads, and the 3 burial Dharma robe. The abandoned immortal sword chi slashed at the sky-climbing vine again. The skull prayer beads gathered and separated, forming a skeleton demon formation. The most important thing was the 3 burial Dharma robe. This was the first time she used it, so she couldn't be sure of its effects. However, she trusted the enemy's judgment. If there were no threats at all, the flood dragon could have done what it did earlier, fending off the combined attacks of the 3 of them while continuing to devour Qian Rongji's soul nascence. It would have been able to buy a little more time, and it would not have launched an immediate counterattack. At the same time, he gripped the Buddha-slaying sword tightly and transmitted a thought to Gu Yenying. "If there's a chance, fly me over." "Understood." Gu Yenying nodded. The Hui Long lured Li Qingshan into the fortress formed by the 8 cauldrons. He flew up alone and grabbed with his dragon claw. The abandoned immortal sword that was slashing at the sky-climbing vine landed in his hand. He praised, "Good sword." Boom! The 8 cauldrons shattered, revealing a flower in full bloom. It had 3 colors. The stamen was sharp, and the petals were as red as blood. However, the edges were as black as ink. It was formed by pieces of blade light, and it shattered all the cauldrons. Countless fragments of the divine seal flew in all directions and fused into the world. The images of mountains, rivers, and lakes appeared in the world. The mountains were majestic, and the rivers surged. It gave people a feeling that it was more realistic than real mountains and rivers. The Hui Long took a deep breath and raised the abandoned immortal sword high up. Dragon Chi gathered in his palm. True Dragon Emperor Sword, one sword to level the world. The golden sword light expanded to 300 meters, causing the mountains, rivers, and lakes to lose their color. The voices of all living beings resounded in the world. It was like the roar of mountains and the roar of tsunamis. The unruly abandoned immortal sword couldn't resist at all. At this moment, he was the high and mighty ruler of the world. Everything in the world belonged to the king. Those who led the land were the king's subjects. All living beings were his subjects. If the king wanted his subjects to die, the subjects had no choice but to die. Li Qingshan was no exception. The destiny of heaven and the hearts of all living beings were condensed in the sword. It followed the trajectory of the ancient laws and slashed toward Li Qingshan. The flower withered after blooming. Li Qingshan had just broken out of the cauldron's encirclement. His demonic aura wasn't working well, and his body was full of openings. He stared at the irresistible and unavoidable sword of the emperor. He was like a madman at the end of his rope. He laughed wildly and used the tiger demon's fury. The tiger tattoo on his forehead formed a king character. Blood chi surged all over his body, and the image of the great freedom heavenly demon appeared behind him. It moved forward with an indomitable will and swung its blade to meet the attack. This blade didn't have any external support. It only had a resolute will of not fearing the destiny of heaven, not fearing the hearts of men, and fighting to the death. It was the blade of an ordinary man. Chapter 1338. It was like a ball of thick ink splashed across heaven and earth, bursting with red light and golden light. The mountains, rivers, and lakes that appeared in the air were like a mirage blown by a hot wind. They became blurry and quickly disappeared. The sky above Dragon Head Mountain was covered in spiderweb-like cracks. It was as if Jasper Palace could not bear their existence. The huge stone buildings that had stood on the mountain peak for tens of thousands of years crumbled like sand sculptures on the beach. However, the red light gradually dimmed and was drowned in the surging golden light. He was a demon king that was hated by heaven and cursed by all living beings. How could he fight against the might of heaven and the will of all living beings alone? The sword light penetrated every pore and was as sharp as a blade. Unknowingly, fine cracks covered his sturdy body, forming bloody scars. He was like a bronze that had been eroded by time and was peeling off piece by piece. He was completely oblivious to the fact that every piece of his skin was burning up and turning into specks of flame. The cracks were like the fissures of the earth. Scorching lava gushed out and set his entire body ablaze. He went against the surging golden light and rushed to the front of the Chua dragon. With a clang, the blade and the sword clashed. Li Qingshan and Chua Long looked at each other. One was like fire, the other like gold. Neither wavered. True gold did not fear fire, but the fire would eventually burn out. With a bang, Li Qingshan's body cracked and turned into thousands of flowing flames. The ending flower frenzy saber spun and flew out, falling from the mountain peak. There was a deep sword mark on it. Since the battle at Jasper Palace, he had fought the Golden Dragon and then defeated the Dragon King. His physique was already close to its limit. After shattering the 8 cauldrons, he was on the verge of collapse. Then, he had to face Chua Long's brilliant sword. He might as well use all his strength. Rather than being killed by this sword, it was more accurate to say that he burned himself to death. A bloody mark appeared on Chua Long's forehead and blood flowed down. He was unmoved and stared at the thousands of flowing flames. He waved the abandoned immortal sword again. Little and desperately activated the abandoned immortal sword, but there was no response. He was very anxious. Send me over. Calm down and trust them. If we get hit by this sword, we'll be dead. Gu Yenying said sternly. Even though she had the speed of a Kunping, she would be locked on by the Emperor's sword will if she rashly approached the turtle dragon. There was no way he could escape. With a phoenix cry, the flowing fire gathered once more. Li Qingshan was reborn, but before he could use any divine abilities, he was grabbed by an invisible force and locked onto by the Emperor's sword will. Golden light flashed in Chua Long's eyes as he swung his sword a second time. True Dragon Emperor Sword, one sword to level the world. Li Qingshan raised his head and saw the sword light slashing towards his face. His heart was filled with alarm. He knew that this Feng Long was determined to kill him. If he died again, if it turned into a phoenix egg, it would probably not even need Hui Long to swing his sword a third time. Just the remnant might of the sword light would be enough to destroy it. After a series of bitter battles, Chua Long understood one thing. If he didn't completely destroy Li Qingshan, this battle wouldn't end. As long as he killed this traitor, the enemy would no longer be a threat to him. At this critical juncture, Li Qingshan was fearless. He shouted and was about to swing his fist, but a figure blocked in front of him. Xiaoming. Luo Ho Xiaoming crossed his arms. There was a deep ball of darkness in them. It kept swallowing the whistling sword aura. However, in front of such an absolute difference in power, even the Azura Divine Prince couldn't resist. In the blink of an eye, the darkness was broken. He turned around and nodded at Li Qingshan, following which he shattered his bones and used his flesh and blood to block the sword. Li Qingshan roared. He spread his wings and shot into the sky, pouncing towards the turtle dragon in the air. He held the 9 heaven living soil tightly and activated the earth force field again, connecting them tightly. Fierceness flashed in Chua Long's eyes. He used the attraction force to swing his sword down. The twisted blade was like a golden lightning bolt, piercing deep into Li Qingshan's chest. The sword aura rampaged, destroying his body. Not only did Li Qingshan not dodge, but he also went forward. He opened his arms and hugged Chua Long tightly, using the ox demon forges its hide to attack. He opened his bloody mouth and bit Chua Long's neck. 4 of his blade-like teeth were broken by the dragon scales, but the remaining teeth still tore through the dragon scales and drank the dragon blood. Gu Yenying flew through the air with Little and in her arms. She arrived behind Chua Long in an instant, and the Buddha-slaying sword stabbed at him silently. Chua Long frowned. He grabbed the sword with his claws, and his fingers gripped the blade tightly. Taking advantage of Gu Yenying's speed, Little Anne's sword was unprecedentedly sharp. It pierced through Chualong's claws and continued to stab at Chualong's back amidst the sound of metal scraping against metal. However, it was blocked by the layer of golden dragon scales, unable to advance any further. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Li Qingshan was already heavily injured. Chualong only needed to break free, and he would be invincible again. No one would be able to block his path. At this moment, little Anne's voice sounded in his ears. It sounded like he was reciting scriptures, but there was not a hint of holiness or solemnity. Instead, it was filled with blasphemy and ominous intent. The 3-burial robe that had been floating in the air descended from the sky and wrapped around the 4 of them. A figure flew out from the bag and landed heavily on the ruined Dragon Head Mountain. It was Li Qingshan. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his body was riddled with holes. The abandoned immortal sword was still stuck in his chest. Soon after, Gu Yenying and Little An also flew out from the bag. Li Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. He wanted to get up and fight again, but he couldn't move. His organs and meridians were all shattered, and his body could collapse at any moment. If he had been stabbed by Chualong a few more times, he would have turned into an egg. In any case, this was his last fight, but he didn't know whether he would succeed or fail. The bag kept tumbling in the sky. Little An put her palms together and looked solemn. Her thin red lips opened and closed rapidly as she recited blasphemous scriptures. The chaotic soul bell at her waist rang incessantly as if she was carrying out a funeral ritual. The bag quickly shrank and turned into a kasaya that wrapped around Chualong's body. There was even a string of white prayer beads hanging around her neck. It was as if she had suddenly turned from the emperor of Great Xia into a Buddhist monk. The kasaya and the prayer beads were the 3-burial robe and the skull prayer beads. The scripture was hurried, and the ringing of the bell was chaotic. The skull prayer beads turned into skulls that were cackling strangely. Strings of scripture appeared on the 3-burial Dharma robe, and they were chanting at the exact same frequency as her. The 3 voices chased after one another, rising and falling, merging together. It was extremely chaotic and noisy. If there were cries of living beings when Chualong swung the sword of the emperor, then the voices were like the summons of all the living beings who had died in the samadhi flames of white bone. Come to our side. There's no more pain or fear. This is the ultimate paradise. Even Li Qingshan felt agitated when he heard that. He used the spirit turtle to suppress his mind in a hurry. Shut up. Chualong covered his ears. His face twisted viciously. Hell snakes slithered out from under his scales, raising their heads in Little N's direction as if they were listening. The world is like a house of fire, and all living beings suffer. The sea of bitterness knows no bounds, but who can reach the other shore? Is this the white bone bodhisattva's true scripture of the 3-burial? Chapter 1339. Li Qingshan turned his head with everything he had and saw Luo Ho Xiaoming's smiling face. Apart from his pale face, he was completely unscathed. He was currently observing Li Qingshan's miserable state with great interest. Grabbing the hilt of the forsaken immortal sword with both hands, he planted a foot on Li Qingshan's chest and pulled it out forcefully. He lost his footing and fell to the ground. He just spread his limbs and looked at the sky. Asura were known to possess undying bodies. Not only could they constantly revive, but their bodies also possessed great vitality and regeneration. They could continue fighting even if their heads were chopped off. As an Asura god, he could even be reborn from a single droplet of blood, so his body was extremely tough. However, his cultivation was still low after all. After receiving a direct blow from the true Dragon Emperor's sword, his situation was no better than Li Qingshan's. He could only maintain his life, but it was impossible for him to continue fighting. Blood spurted out from Li Qingshan's wounds. He had almost died. His blood began to burn in the air, turning into flames and returning to his body. Only then did he survive. He relied on the power of the phoenix to hang on. He said in exasperation, "Thanks." Although he found the scripture of Tripitaka to be rather familiar for some reason, now was definitely not the time to pay attention to that. The battle had already reached a moment where the outcome would be decided. A mighty dragon's roar suddenly rang out, each louder than the last like the waves of the sea. It rang through the entire dragon province, reaching the ends of the clouds. Rumble! Thunder rumbled in the clear sky, as if it was responding to the dragon's roar, drowning out the bell's sound. Crack! A crack appeared on the soul confusion bell, and the sound immediately dimmed. All of the blood vessels in Hui Long's body surged, and veins bulged on his forehead. He gripped the skull prayer beads firmly, forcefully crushing 7 or 8 of them before pulling hard. The prayer beads shattered, and the strange cackling came to a halt. There was only little Anne's chanting. It was unaffected by anything else, repeating itself endlessly. Hui Long wanted to rip off the 3 burial robes, but wherever his claws touched, it would all turn into samadhi flames of white bone. His face twisted even more viciously. He was no longer as calm as he was just now. This was a sign of cultivation deviation. He roared, "Shut up!" The golden dragon image flashed, and the Hui dragon traversed the void with a single step, clawing at little Anne. Gu Yenying flew up with little, and while the Chua dragon chased after them relentlessly. A dragon and a rock whizzed through the surroundings of the Dragon Head Mountain, leaving behind a series of afterimages. Sharp whistling sounds rose and fell in succession. Gu Yenying seemed to be at ease. Even Chua Long in the state of Yang spirit was no match for her. Like flying a kite, he kept a safe distance from the Hui Long, guarding against any spells that the Hui Long might cast. There was a faint worry in his heart, so he did not leave the Dragon Head Mountain. Soon, her worries became reality. The Hui dragon suddenly stopped chasing and pounced towards Li Qingshan and Luo Ho Xiaoming. Even though the Chua dragon was crazy, the threat it posed was still fatal. Gu Yenying's eyes flashed like lightning. With a turn of his body, he flew toward Zhang Xian. The 2 figures pounced toward the peak of the mountain almost at the same time. Gu Yenying's speed was faster, but she was farther away from the peak than the Chua dragon. If it was a long-distance raid, this distance was nothing at all. But in such a short race, it was a heavenly moat that was difficult to reach. "Don't come over!" Li Qingshan shouted. According to his deduction, once they entered the Chua dragon's attack range, their lives would be in danger. Gu Yenying was almost about to collide with the Chua dragon. Even if she could be 1 step ahead, she would not be able to escape. It could be said that she would die without a doubt. They did not have the Phoenix's nirvana or the immortal body. At this moment, time seemed to slow down. A bolt of lightning slowly spread in the sky, reflected in everyone's eyes. The Chua dragon waved its right arm and opened its sharp claws, showing off its sharpness. Life and death were tied in an instant. A white robe floated in front of Li Qingshan. The golden dragon claw was reflected in her ethereal eyes, quickly filling her vision. Li Qingshan felt pain in his shoulder. Gu Yenying had grabbed him and little Ming with a solemn expression. He instantly understood her intentions, or little Anne's intentions. Only by blocking this move of the Chua dragon could they possibly escape with Gu Yenying. Little Anne. The blood sea banner fluttered in the wind, fluttering in front of her. With a rip, the blood sea banner shattered and danced in the air. With a furious dragon roar, the dragon claw tore through the void and slashed toward them. The strong wind caused her seaweed-like long hair to flutter, gently caressing Li Qingshan's face. He opened his eyes wide and looked at her back. Her figure suddenly became blurry, as if she would dissipate at any moment. She put her palms together and closed her eyes, revealing a smile of understanding. Boom! Thunder exploded. Smoke and dust filled the air on Dragon Head Mountain. This was the solid mountain rock that had been crushed into powder. Gu Yenying grabbed Li Qingshan and Luo Ho Xiaoming and soared into the sky. Li Qingshan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, his insides burning, but he could not say a word. Her figure was faintly discernible in the smoke and dust. She put her palms together and lowered her head in silence. Slowly, she opened her eyes. Behind her was a huge crater. The Chua dragon's dragon claw scratched the side of her face. Its entire body trembled, and its eyes were filled with anger. It growled, "Qian Rongji." The Chua dragon was fighting 2 battles at the same time. One was against Li Qingshan and the other was to devour Qian Rongji's nascent soul. Originally, the latter was a battle of annihilation that held an absolute advantage and posed no threat to him. However, in the previous battle, he had been forced to use the true Dragon Emperor sword, and had no time to care about Qian Rongji. Even so, there was no suspense in the battle between the young spirit and the nascent soul, until he put on the three-burial robe. The three-burial robe was a very special white bone magic item. It could reincarnate life and death, and when combined with the three-burial sutra, it could convert the enemy to the path of white bone and great beauty. However, Little and did not have any confidence that the three-burial robe could threaten the Chua dragon. After all, the difference in realms was too great. Even a demonic sword like the abandoned immortal sword had been turned into the Chua dragon's emperor sword. In fact, up until this moment, he had not been able to convert the Chua dragon, but he had converted Qian Rongji. This caused the Chua dragon's inner demons to be thrown into chaos, and he successfully regained control of a part of his body. At the critical moment, he twisted his wrist. The Chua dragon roared angrily and used all his strength to attack Little End, but his body stiffened and twisted. All the attacks passed by Little End, not harming her at all. He wanted to cast a spell, but his power always dissipated at the critical moment. The scattered skull prayer beads turned into skulls that bit at him. Originally, he did not care about such a small trick, but now he could not even dodge. All the acupoints on his joints were bitten, and he staggered to his knees. Little An asked, "Are you all right?" "Yes, with that bone sword." "I can't flee against him." Qian Rongji's voice was intermittent, mixed in with the Chua dragon's desperate roars. This stalemate could not last for long. The young spirit could not be defeated. From the moment the Chua dragon had decided to possess her, she had already lost. A snake trying to swallow an elephant would definitely end up bursting its stomach. Even if she struggled at death's door, she would not be able to change the final outcome. "Kill me," she looked up at the Chua dragon, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Perhaps this was not bad. The person who set the world on fire would also set herself on fire. The person who could not forgive fate would also not be forgiven by fate. The Chua dragon recklessly devoured everything. Was it because the person it wanted to devour the most was herself? She had long been tired of this kind of reincarnation. She could finally stop here. She smiled and closed her eyes. Yes, she did not want to reincarnate anymore. She would rather have never existed. Thus, Little and brandished the Buddha-slaying sword. Floating astronomy. Chapter 1340. The sky was a dazzling blue, and the winds howled for thousands of miles, as if lamenting the end of the child of destiny. An eagle's cry tore through the sky. At some point, a male eagle circled in the sunlight. Chua Long's heart was dead, and he no longer argued with Qian Rongji. That would only make his defeat even more humiliating. His pride did not allow him to do that. But was this the end? He could not accept it. He could not accept it no matter what. In terms of true strength, no one here could take a single blow from him. Even if everyone here worked together, they would not be a match for him. But he had lost, and it was a crushing defeat. It was like a nightmare that he could not wake up from. Unifying the world and moving unhindered through the 9 provinces was like a dream. The hatred brewed from thousands of negative emotions was like a poisonous snake biting at his soul. The one he hated the most was not Li Qingshan, Little End, or even Qian Rongji, but Sumi Rao, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. If she had not caused him to suffer chi deviation, he would not have ended up like this. That should have been the peak of his life, but he had fallen into a bottomless abyss, beyond redemption. From love to hatred, being defeated and killed by the enemy was simply because he was not as skilled. He could calmly accept such an ending, or rather, he had already realized this from the moment he stepped onto the path of cultivation. But he was betrayed by the woman he loved the most, and lost to an opponent weaker than him. He could not accept it no matter what. His aura was extremely chaotic, and he almost lost control of himself. His chi deviation caused layers of illusions to appear before his eyes. Fragments of the distant past almost reversed his entire life. If he was not the child of destiny, he would have exploded and died before anyone could kill him. The tip of the sword hovered in the air, not falling for a long time. Why? Qian Rongji opened her eyes. Because you are the child of destiny. Killing you will cause a backlash. Little and sheathed the Buddha-slaying sword. He stated his reason. With a wave of his sleeve, the forsaken immortal sword flew back into his hand. He gently caressed the blade. It had almost been refined by Chuolong, and even the sword spirit was completely suppressed. Is that so? Qian Rongji muttered to herself, and a will to live suddenly arose in her heart. She strongly suspected that this was due to the influence of the dragon. But was there any other way out? She was both Qian Rongji and human Emperor Feng Long, little Anne. Li Qingshan threw himself at her and held her tightly in his arms. Smelling the faint scent of sandalwood in her hair, he had a surreal feeling of being reborn, as if he had returned to the time when he first came to this world. Qingshan. Little Anne smiled faintly, like ripples in a quiet pond. Li Qingshan calmed down and reprimanded, "Who allowed you to do this?" "Anyway, it's not you." Little Anne stuck out his tongue. Li Qingshan was speechless at first, but then his heart ached. His expression was as if all the injuries on his body were acting up at once. Suddenly he felt that Qian Rongji or Zhuolong's gaze was like a venomous snake coiling around him, making him feel uncomfortable. If it were not for the fact that he did not want to bite the hand that fed him, he would be tempted to end it right here and now. However, she believed that Little Anne would definitely have thought things through, so she cast a questioning gaze at him. Little Anne said, "Qingshan, there's a place I want to go." "Where to?" "The Lingua Temple." The Lingua Temple of the past had now become the largest demon cavern in the 9 provinces. Black demon chi surged into the clouds, like a never-ending smoke signal. Dark clouds blanketed the sky and earth. The land within a radius of 500 kilometers had been polluted, and all living beings had been demonized. It became extraordinarily twisted and violent. The demon cavern was surprisingly peaceful. Now that the demon caverns of the world were open and unguarded, this was the best situation they had ever encountered since the demon domain began invading the 9 provinces. However, whenever Little Anne opened up a demon cavern, he would go on a killing spree. Even after he opened up the demon cavern, no demon folk dared to emerge. Only after a while did they dare to send out scouts. They secretly investigated the situation of the 9 provinces, but the ghost tower had greatly affected the demon folks' determination to invade. The demon domain was vast, but it was still not enough to steal food from the hungry ghost realm. If the herbivores invading the demon domain could be described as constantly chewing and ruminating, only then could they digest it. Then the hungry ghost realm was a naked carnivore, tearing apart flesh and gulping it down. Later on, the Hui dragon descended from the sky along the heaven-climbing vine, causing the situation of the 9 states to become even more complicated and confusing. The terrifying auras that erupted from the battles that surpassed the limits of the 3rd heavenly tribulation caused the demon kings who were investigating to tremble. They advised the demon emperor several times to give up on invading this world. However, the demon emperor remained silent. He had other plans. When Li Qingshan's group arrived before the demon cavern, the scouting demon king had fled back into the demon domain a long time ago. Gazing at the unfathomable demon cavern, Li Qingshan recalled what Luo Ho Xiaoming had said. He already understood what Little Anne wanted to do. Why? Qian Rongji gazed at the forsaken immortal sword in her hand and asked again. Little Anne did not answer this question. All she said was, "Go." Qian Rongji gazed at her face and turned around to make her way into the demon cavern. Her figure gradually blurred until she arrived at the edge of the demon cavern. She glanced back again before leaping into the demon cavern, vanishing into the surging demon chi. They constantly fell into the dark abyss. The hearts of all living beings and the will of the heavens were gradually stripped from their bodies. Either he or she was no longer the child of destiny of the 9 provinces. Even if they wanted to turn back, it was impossible. Afterwards, the skull prayer beads flew away. In the end, only the 3 burial robes remained, which gradually peeled off from their bodies. Just as Li Qingshan's group was about to leave, a hysterical dragon's roar suddenly rang out in the demon cavern. It was not just expressing bone-deep hatred, but also the ecstasy of escaping, or just chi deviation. Little and asked with uncertainty, "Did I do anything wrong?" Li Qingshan shrugged. "Who cares?" The 9 cauldrons had already shattered. Once they left the 9 provinces, the Huolong would no longer be the child of destiny. It was impossible for him to return. He even hoped that the Huolong could devour Qian Rongji and return to him one day. He exchanged glances with Luo Ho Xiaoming. Their eyes shone with the same light. Even though there was a difference of 2 major realms of cultivation, the feeling of being smashed to pieces still did not feel too good. If there was an opportunity for revenge, then it would be for the best. Who do you think will win? That's hard to say. You've already witnessed the power of the Yang soul, and that woman will probably become the child of destiny of the demon domain. The will of the heavens? The will of the heavens? There really is always a way out. Is it really that easy to become the child of destiny? Aren't all demon folk vicious and evil? They're just a bunch of pitiful worms under the control of demon hearts. They'll completely demonify into wild beasts from the slightest carelessness, constantly sucking up to the heavens in hopes of receiving even more charity. They're just hypocrites. Luo Ho Xiaoming was very disdainful of demon folk. After all, the Azura realm was a benevolent path among the 6 realms of Sasra. However, probably only the 12 demon gods could match up to the evil he had committed. Hypocrites. This was the first time Li Qingshan had heard of this term, but when he thought about the customs of a place like the demon domain, he could not help but laugh. Calling people hypocrites in the demon domain was definitely an insult. He could use it when he arrived in the demon domain in the future. He still had a wager in the demon domain. He had to abide by the ancient, bloody oath and venture into the depths of the evil demon domain to challenge the undefeatable demon gods. Just the thought of it made his blood boil. At this moment, a charming, unpredictable voice suddenly rang out. "Oh my, I didn't think you'd actually get away with it. Then let me calculate how much time you have left." Li Qingshan frowned. "Su Min Rao." Su Min Rao raised her chin and smiled. "If you want to escape from Qiongqi, then kneel and beg me." How could she not sense demon god Qiongqi's arrival in the 9 provinces in the past? She had also investigated the contents of the Nether River Blood Oath. Luo Ho Xiaoming said in surprise, "Demon god Qiongqi?" Li Qingshan stared at Su Min Rao closely as he explained everything to his important ally, Luo Ho Xiaoming. Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes widened. He cried out involuntarily, "The Nether River Blood Oath. And a promise of 500 years? Do you know that 500 years is a trap? In a world like that, it's impossible for your cultivation to advance. It'll be pointless even if you stay for another 5,000 years. And even if you really do have 500 years, Qiongqi is a true demon that has undergone 7 heavenly tribulations. He's one of the few in the 3,000 realms of Sasra. You'd better go to the demon domain to fight Qingqi Mountain. There, even the Zhenwu demon-rinsing patriarch of the desireless heavenly palace can't do anything to him." Li Qingshan spread his hands. "What can I do? Who asked me to be so charming that Qiongqi wants me to be the 2nd strongest in Qingqi Mountain? If I go to the demon domain, I might also be the child of destiny. I would have already led an army to conquer the 9 provinces. Why would I need to fight Chuolong?" Chapter 411. Possessed by the Devil. Chapter 1341. Luo Ho Xiaoming did not know whether to admire his courage or to sigh that the ignorant were fearless. He was only a 3rd-stage heavenly tribulation cultivator. The difference between him and the 7th-stage heavenly tribulation true demon Qiongqi was like heaven and earth. When an ant fought with a human, there would always be a chance to take a bite, even if it would be crushed to death. It was impossible for Li Qingshan to bite Qiongqi even if he risked his life. However, Qiongqi's favor towards Li Qingshan was not strange at all, because from the perspective of a cultivator, this guy was too strange. His words and actions were completely different from others. "You have a way to remove the river Styx blood oath?" This was the only explanation, because even if she immediately returned to the Azura realm to cultivate, She would not be able to defeat Qiongqi in such a short time. However, it was not that there was no way to remove the river Styx blood oath, but it was definitely not something she could do. Su Minrao sneered, "If I had a way to remove the river Styx blood oath, why would I be grinding my teeth with you here?" She played with her hair with her fingertips, "But I do have a way. Although I cannot guarantee success, it is better than death, and it is related to a huge secret. Li Qingshan, with your conduct, when you reach the demon realm, you probably won't even be able to reach Qingqi Mountain, let alone defeat Qiongqi. I will ask you again, are you going to kneel or not?" Li Qingshan lowered his head and slightly closed his eyes. He stood there motionlessly, as if he was pondering. Su Minrao stood with her umbrella, her clothes fluttering in the wind. In the surging demon qi, she looked like a radiant goddess, while Li Qingshan was the lowly disciple waiting for redemption. Time ticked by. Su Minrao was getting impatient. She turned her neck slightly and said, "Hey, have you made up your mind? I don't have time to waste with you." Little and said, "Don't disturb him, he's asleep." "What?" Su Minrao took a closer look. Li Qingshan's eyes were closed, and his breathing was deep. Sure enough, he had fallen asleep. In this battle, Li Qingshan had almost crossed 2 major realms. This was simply unbelievable in the cultivation world. No matter how fast Gu Yenying's speed was, no matter how powerful Luo Ho Xiaoming's bloodline was, no matter how many magical weapons Little and had, no matter how insidious and cunning Qian Rongji was. If it weren't for Li Qingshan, they wouldn't have been able to do anything. In the face of absolute power, any strategy would be futile. Li Qingshan was like a mountain, silently shouldering the majority of the pressure and maintaining the strategic offensive against Hui Long. Of course, since he cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods, his strength was not limited to that of a demon king. Moreover, Chua Long was restricted by the laws of heaven and earth, so he could not unleash the power of a human sovereign. That was how such a miracle was created. Even so, this battle was also extremely difficult and dangerous. The charm of the 9-tailed demon fox, the invincible enemy, and the threat of heavens will all required him to focus and fight to the end. It was like walking on a tightrope on a cliff, one careless step and he would be smashed to pieces. His stamina had already been drained, so as soon as the outcome of the battle was decided, fatigue immediately washed over him. With the support of his divine earth force, he could still stand stably here, basically, standing until the very last moment. As for Su Minrao's conditions, he didn't even think about it for a second. Because someone once told him, "Don't lower your head to anyone," and he deeply believed it, not even willing to lower his head. Not to mention kneeling. Perhaps he really couldn't escape from the battle at Mount Qingqi, but he could be killed, but he couldn't be scared to death. He had to eat and sleep. "Mi Rao, you've miscalculated again." Gu Yenying opened her fan and smiled. Luo Ho Xiaoming proudly replied, "He's just another undefeatable enemy. He's not enough to make Li Qingshan so afraid that he can't sleep." A hint of anger flashed in Su Minrao's eyes. She felt like she was acting like an idiot just now. She gripped the handle of her umbrella tightly, wishing she could kill Li Qingshan right there and then. She didn't really intend to make Li Qingshan kneel, she just couldn't help but get back at him. As long as Li Qingshan gave in and gave her a way out, she could naturally fulfill the oath and help him. She didn't expect him to not give her any face at all. However, if Li Qingshan really gave in, she would probably take things one step further. The path of charm was always about taking a mile when given an inch, and she wasn't the type to take enough advantage of others. Just as she was about to leave, she vaguely saw a long, silent river meandering in the void, surpassing time and space, unable to be judged by the concept of length or width. It was the legendary river Styx. She gritted her teeth and had no choice but to stop. Since they had already met, the oath had officially begun. She had to assume the role of a guide and give Li Qingshan the correct guidance. Otherwise, she would be breaking the oath and falling into the river Styx forever. In a trance, she seemed to see a gentle smile. A pair of green eyes looked at her from above. "Mi Rao, you should just accept your fate." "Can I kneel and beg you?" Little asked, her face expressionless. Her eyes were empty and deep, as if she could see through Su Minrao's inner struggle. Stare. Su Minrao felt that the way she looked at her was no different from looking at a block of wood. Other than angering Li Qingshan, what else could she gain from her kowtow? Even if she did not feel humiliated at all, Li Qingshan would definitely fly into a rage and become even less likely to be charmed. It would even affect the process of the oath. This had to be one of her damn schemes. She said word by word, "You can't." Su Minrao took a deep breath to suppress her anger. "Tell this bastard to find me when he wakes up." She turned around and disappeared. Looks like she really does know something. Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes shone brightly. Just what was the method to defeat a god? If he stood with this guy, he would never have to worry about not having a fight. "Hey, wake up." Gu Yenying tapped Li Qingshan's forehead with her fan, and Li Qingshan collapsed on the ground. She looked at his sleeping face and shook her head with a smile. "We'll talk about everything when he wakes up." When the Kun Peng spread its wings and took off again, Little and gazed back at the depths of the demon cavern. "I hope there'll be a day when you can tell me that the path of white bones is wrong." Even the people who suffer in the sea of bitterness of the Hua family, the people who would rather not exist, have their own value and reasons for their existence. The demon domain. Under the illumination of a black sun, the camps stretched for thousands of kilometers on a plain of black soil. It was extremely noisy, filled with evil, twisted demon folk and colossal, vicious demonic beasts. On the surface, the two often seemed the same. The sky was densely packed with demon caverns, like empty eye sockets. Every single one of them led to the same world, the 9 provinces. However, this target had already been abandoned. The army was currently retreating from this region, preparing to set off for a new battlefield and invade another world. "What's that?" Suddenly, a demon folk raised his head and discovered a figure as tiny as a mustard seed had descended from the largest demon cavern in the sky. If he took a closer look, he would discover that the figure was currently pulling on itself, constantly twisting. The black sun seemed to brighten. In that instant, the surroundings changed color. Demon chi whistled and surged, gathering into surging demonic clouds that surged and swirled into a great swirl. At the center of the swirl was the twisted figure. The surroundings fell silent. All the demon folk held their breaths, gazing at the phenomenon in the sky. A single word appeared in their minds: demon seed. This was what demon folk referred to as children of destiny, who had gained the favor of the demon domain. It represented unparalleled talent and strength. The fervent atmosphere swept through like a fierce gale, making the eyes of all the demon folk light up with greed. Even the chaotic, foolish demonic beasts began to pant. They instinctively wanted to devour the demon seed that was about to form. In any world, becoming a child of destiny meant receiving the protection of the heavens. If anyone was bold enough to kill a child of destiny, they would suffer an intense backlash. In a world with a powerful will of the world, a backlash like that could even be fatal. It was equivalent to the death of their beloved son. They would obviously be furious and want revenge. However, that was not the case in the demon domain. Not only would killing a demon seed not lead to any backlash, but it could even steal the will of the heavens instead, granting them tremendous benefits. Not to mention that demon seeds were the best pills and medicines in the demon domain. Devouring the most ordinary, weak demon seed was enough for their demon heart to undergo a qualitative change. As a result, whenever a demon seed was born, it would lead to intense slaughter and conflict. Many demon seeds would die prematurely as soon as they were born. It was like a vicious stepmother purposefully giving the most fun toy to the child she hated the most, leading to a fight between the other children. This was the demon domain. Even the obscure will of heaven was filled with distortion and evil. To be continued. Chapter 412, Blood Oath Demon Seed. Chapter 1342. This is, a middle-aged man in short, brown, hemp garments and a beard made his way out of the tent that was as grand as a palace. He gazed at the sky in surprise. It was not like he had never seen a demon seed being born before, but he had never heard of one that could cause such a tremendous phenomenon. The demon domain was boundless, far beyond what the 9 provinces could rival. If the 9 provinces were compared to a small lake, then the demon domain would be the vast ocean. A small lake could not nurture a large fish, but the ocean could accommodate dragons. Its twisted evil will permeated every speck of dust. Perhaps it was no different from the will of the world of the 9 provinces in nature. However, when the small lake rippled slightly, the ocean churned violently and the ocean flowed for thousands of kilometers. Even true dragons could not go against the flow. If they could go with the flow, they would receive endless assistance. This was exactly what it meant to borrow the strength of the world when the time came. There were as many demon seeds as there were carps in the river throughout history. There were differences in quality among them. The purer it was, the greater the temptation. He hated this feeling of being out of control, which was why he did not take off on his sword and devour the demon seed. However, he hated the throbbing in the depths of his heart even more. He felt like the demon seed was filled with disaster and misfortune. Regular demon folk were unable to resist this temptation, let alone the brainless demonic beasts. A strange bird unfurled its bluish-black bat wings and kicked up a fierce gust of wind, sending all the demon folk within 3 meters into the air. A sharp, ear-piercing howl sounded like the bugle call for a charge. Several 100,000 demon folk flew towards the demon seed. In that moment, they shrouded the sky and filled the air with a ruckus. The man's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stood there without moving. Even as the commander of this army, he was unable to stop this revelry. As far as the eye could see, the demon kings under his command all remained on the sidelines. They did not act recklessly. At the same time, they remained cautious of one another. In the end, their gazes all gathered on him. No one could steal the demon seed from him. "Sir Demon Emperor, what do we do?" "Wait." In the depths of the vortex, a male and female voice argued intensely. The two wills clashed desperately. "Bitch, piss off." The man roared as he resisted the will of heaven. With his masculine power, he gained the absolute upper hand. "He, trash, loser, cuckold." The woman laughed crazily and spat out the words one by one, directly hitting the man's weak spot. "All women in the world deserve to die." The man's inner demons danced chaotically, and he flew into a rage. He wanted nothing more than to perish together with her. "Oh, how sad your mother will be." But the woman never regarded death as a threat. She laughed at the man's incompetence even more wantonly. It was like an eternal struggle between men and women, rationality and emotion, masculinity and femininity. No matter how strong a man was, he would never be able to completely conquer a weak woman. Just like how rationality could never erase emotions, because a woman's body was pregnant with the heavenly Tao. The body of the true dragon, which was a mixture of the flesh and blood of many grand cultivators and demon kings, bobbed up and down in the swirl like a child that was left aside and ignored. Although it was the cause of the dispute, therefore, it grew up without restraint, and demonic energy surged into it. It expanded 1,000 times and turned into a golden-scaled snake with a pair of dragon eyes. It twisted its body violently as if it had gone mad. The demon emperor's heart tightened. A colossal body like that definitely would not be easy to deal with. The demon kings even began to consider retreating. They had basically given up on the idea of devouring the demon seed. The huge snake devoured all the demon chi in the air, and its colossal body fell straight towards the ground. It smashed into the mountainous demon folk army at first before landing heavily with a great rumble. Countless demon folk were smashed to pulp. However, even more demon folk surged over, swallowing the huge snake in a black mass. Looking down from above, it seemed like a group of ants trying to divide and devour a dead snake. Rumble! The huge snake rolled its body, grinding through the ground again and again. Crack, crack. Its bones shattered. Spurt, spurt. Flesh and blood sprayed everywhere. The sounds mixed together, enough to make people shiver in fear and feel their scalps tingle. In the blink of an eye, It had turned the ground into a swamp of flesh and blood. It was filled with mangled flesh and severed limbs. The smell of blood rose into the air. However, the frenzied atmosphere did not stop. Instead, it rose even higher. The demon folk lunged towards the huge snake wave after wave. Most of those who were crushed to pulp were regular demon folk, while the thousands of demon commanders and demon emperors flew through the air agilely like winged soldier ants, allowing the demon folk to deplete the snake's power. Gradually, the huge snake stopped wriggling as if it had used up all of its strength in its struggle. It lay on the ground like a dead snake, allowing the ants to swallow it. The golden scales were indestructible, but they could not stop the claws and teeth of so many demon folk. They were ripped apart bit by bit. The demon folk tasted the sweet, delicious flesh and blood of the true dragon. The mysterious power of the demon seed within it made them even more spirited and more zealous. That's it. The demon emperor was stunned. This was basically worse than a regular wild beast. It was a complete waste of such terrifying power. For some reason, he had a feeling that the huge snake was not struggling against the demon folk. Instead, it was fighting against an invisible enemy. Just what had happened to the 9 provinces. He could not help but glance at the demon cavern in the sky, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. He saw a strange, twisted sword hovering right below the black demon cavern. He cried out involuntarily, "The obedient sword!" Originally, he saw how the huge snake had stopped struggling and was about to go fight over the demon seed, but he could no longer care about anything else now. He immediately formed a seal with his hand, and with a thunk, the sword on his back flew out of its sheath. Afterwards, he took off on his sword, shooting towards the sword as a violet streak of light. He glanced at the ground from the corner of his eye, only to see the demon kings lunging towards the huge snake from all directions, killing and scattering all the demon folk who stood in their way. They feasted on the snake's body. In order to devour even faster, they directly demonified. He snorted coldly inside, "I'll let you eat some flesh and blood for now. If you're bold enough to devour the demon seed, then you're just looking to die." To him, the obedient sword was even more important than the demon seed. It was the greatest reason why he had given up on cultivation and personally presided over the invasion of the 9 provinces. As he rapidly drew closer, he gripped the other sword on his waist cautiously. He still had to be wary of the obedient sword's soul inside. However, even when he gripped the hilt, the obedient sword did not budge at all. He could not help but laugh. Truly, one can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it effortlessly by chance. Once I go collect the demon seed again, my gains will definitely be no less than conquering the 9 provinces. At this moment, miserable cries rang out from below. To his shock, he discovered that the cries were actually coming from the demon kings under his command. These demon kings were all extremely vicious. Who knew how many battles they had gone through to reach their current level? They had basically become numb to pain. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he basically would have struggled to believe just what kind of pain could make them cry out like that. It was like they had fallen into hell. Chapter 1343. The demon folk covered in snakes all fell down, rotting and festering in the air. They fell into the swamp of flesh and blood, kicking up wisps of smoke that wriggled like snakes. Dark red, orange, indigo, dark green. Countless colors spread out in the swamp of flesh and blood, weaving and merging with one another, constantly changing and changing. It was an indescribably beautiful sight. Clouds of smoke and miasma rose up from the ground, and the air was filled with a sweet smell. Even the demon folk who had failed to gather over in the first place collapsed in the smell, becoming a part of it in the end. The demon emperor was stunned. He immediately realized that the flesh and blood of the huge snake was venomous. The demon kings gripped their throats firmly, using their sharp claws to rip at their organs in an attempt to force out the venom. However, smoke snakes slithered out from the gaping wounds, wrapping around them slowly. The demon kings collapsed one by one, rotting into mud. Thousands of smoke snakes merged with the miasma. The army of several million demon folk had been completely annihilated. Only their commander remained. The demon emperor suppressed it with all his might. The trembling in his hand became more and more violent. Wrong? It made the unyielding sword's heart throb more and more violently. A bitter taste filled its mouth, the taste of fear. The snake's eyes lit up, shining with golden light like the eyes of a dragon. It opened its abyss-like mouth and sucked in deeply. The miasma surged in. It constantly twisted its mangled body, producing dense scales. Every single scale was a different color, and they constantly changed, reflecting off the mottled miasma. A pair of sharp horns extended from the snake's head, rapidly unfurling and branching like the antlers of a deer. The flame-like mane extended from its back to its tail. Four sharp claws extended from the snake's body, supporting its colossal body. It raised its head and roared at the sky. A violent aura swept out for thousands of kilometers, filled with fury and reluctance. The Demon King? The unyielding sword almost flew out of his hand. The demon emperor discovered that a woman's face had appeared above the dragon's head. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and smiled mysteriously. The demon dragon took off into the air. He rode off on his sword without the slightest hesitation, even though he was in the demon domain. The Demon King could be regarded as an important figure. But how could someone from the 9 states have such a cultivation base? Although the demonic seed could greatly increase one's cultivation, it could not allow one to jump 2 major realms in one go. Moreover, there would definitely be heavenly tribulations during this process, unless the person's strength was already at the 5th heavenly tribulation. Dragon, human emperor, 9 regions. Could it be? Looking back, under the illumination of the black sun, the world was empty, and the army tents rose and fell continuously. Dead silence. That swamp of flesh and blood had evaporated completely, devoured by the giant dragon. At this moment, even the colorful dragon had disappeared. Just now, everything was like a nightmare. Sikong, hide your sword. A voice suddenly sounded in front of him. Startled, he slowly turned his head, only to see the colorful lights in the void receding, revealing a handsome man with a dignified appearance. She had a slender figure and long limbs. There was a diamond-shaped gem embedded in her forehead. 7 colors circulated within it, adding a bit of mystery to her appearance. She was currently staring at him coldly. Your nightmare dragon? Kunpeng circled above the 9 provinces again and again, staring at the ground with its eagle eyes that were as sharp as swords. Even as graceful as she was, her heart was extremely heavy right now. Smoke rose into the sky from the surroundings of the 9 provinces. That was demon chi that constantly surged out of the demon caverns. The vile aura contaminated millions of lands. Millions of lives had been demonized. If these demon caverns were not sealed up, this world would become a demon domain sooner or later, even if demon folk did not invade. However, that was nothing compared to the true threat. Gazing at the boundary between the Green Province and the Mist Province, the maw of hungry ghosts had already become an abyss that stretched over 1,000 kilometers, and it was constantly ripping apart. Everything in the surroundings was falling in. The demon domain was terrifying, but it did not possess the ability to devour worlds. As long as all the demon caverns were suppressed, there would be a day when all the scars would be healed and the contaminated land would be purified. It was impossible to seal up such a colossal maw of hungry ghosts. The laws of death had already begun distorting this world, devouring it faster and faster. The destruction of the world of the 9 provinces was only a matter of time. She sighed and flapped her wings, flying thousands of kilometers away and landing in a pure white city in the surging sea of clouds. The pair of eyes opened quietly. They were scarlet red like fire, magnificent and resplendent. Li Qingshan discovered that he was lying on the surface of the water. Milky white light rippled around him as white wings wrapped around him. The handsome faces were mixed with a mixture of respect and fear. When he glanced past them, they all shifted their gazes away, afraid to meet his eyes. He murmured, "I really feel like I've ascended to heaven." The feathered people looked at one another. They had no idea what he meant. "First Father, you're awake." Li Fengyuan made his way over in surprise and joy. Where is this? Li Qingshan yawned. He felt a sense of relief from exhaustion. This is the holy land of the feathered people. Who knows how many years this pool of Holy Spirit fluid has been accumulated? Just healing you used up half of it. Huh, so much for getting them to agree. If it wasn't bathwater, I would have drunk the remaining half of the pool. Hearing the words, bathwater, the feathered people's expressions turned ugly. However, they had objected to Li Fengyuan bringing the city amongst the clouds to participate in the war. They were afraid that Li Qingshan would settle the score with them later, so they didn't care about the Holy Land anymore. That day, Li Fengyuan, the king of cooking meat, wanted to help the first father. However, after personally witnessing the level of the war, he realized that he was just a stopgap member of the four heavenly kings. Not only could he not be of much help, but he might also need Li Qingshan's protection. If he was accidentally captured as a hostage, he would be more of a hindrance than a help. Thus, he wisely chose to watch from afar. When it came to the decisive battle on Dragon Head Mountain, outsiders were not allowed to interfere. Finally, the first father obtained the final victory. He could only continue to do his logistics work and heal Li Qingshan's injuries with the Phoenix Fire. The effect was very obvious. If we're going to drink, we're going to drink. I'm already prepared. I hope that the first father can defeat Hui Long and unify the 9 provinces. Li Qingshan laughed out loud. Then we'll have to find a few beautiful winged human chicks to drink with us. The expressions of all the winged humans darkened, but they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. So be it. A female winged human stole a glance and thought, it's not really shameful to drink with him. I'll sacrifice myself for the winged human race. With a bang, the door opened. Gu Yenying walked in and said with a smile, it's just that how can the chicks of the winged human race be worthy of Uncle Li? In my opinion, the 7 great foreign human races should each send a few chicks and have a banquet on Dragon Head Mountain for 3 days and 3 nights. Li Qingshan smiled and said, good idea. When the time comes, I'll have Yenying perform a dance for me. Before he finished speaking, he suffered a blow to the head. Gu Yenying sat diagonally at the side of the pool and waved her folding fan lightly. She smiled and asked, are you satisfied with this song? Li Qingshan shook his head. Alright, we'll talk about the celebration later. Let me deal with the matter of the Hungry Ghost Realm first, as well as those demon dens. Gu Yenying was surprised. You still remember? Li Qingshan yawned and stretched. I've always wanted to save the world. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Gu Yenying sighed slightly, but her expression turned resolute again. There's no time to celebrate. We have to leave the 9 provinces as soon as possible. Chapter 4:14. Dragon Transformation, Destruction. Chapter 13:44. Li Qingshan frowned and asked, why? Gu Yenying told him everything she had seen and heard, which made his frown deepen and deepen. The feathered people present paled in fright. If the nest was destroyed, no eggs would remain intact. If the world of the 9 provinces was destroyed, they could only go to the Hungry Ghost Realm or the Demon Domain. Either one would be a choice worse than death for them. And those living beings didn't even have such a choice. Li Qingshan pondered for a long time and asked, is it my fault? Gu Yenying shook her head. The path exists, the heart goes, there is no other choice. Li Qingshan smiled and said, this is not your character. Why, are you afraid of embarrassing me? Even if there are thousands of reasons, I can't absolve myself from the blame. It's really not easy to be a hero. Before I leave, let me do my best. With a splash, he jumped out of the pool, and the milky white spiritual liquid rolled down his bronze-colored body. He was naked and he walked out of the door like a statue. No fault, Li Fengyuan gave him the clothes he had prepared. Li Qingshan shook off the red clothes and put them on. He tightened the belt and asked, where's little Anne? He seems to be digging up the bones. Big Wheel Temple of Lijiu. A white hand stroked the prayer wheel, and the whirring sound passed through the dark corridor. Turning a corner, the sunset dyed the palace built against the mountain red. It was quiet and glorious, and the chanting sound came from afar. Arriving at the main entrance of the hall, Her white bare feet stepped over the high threshold. Thousands of monks were sitting neatly in the vast hall. The chanting sound was continuous, but it suddenly quieted down. The long-browed old monk sitting on the high platform said in a deep voice, "Amitabha, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and you will be saved." His voice shook the house. It was deafening, like thunder. Thousands of monks said together, "The sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and you will be saved." Many pairs of eyes were attracted by the white ghost-like figure, and their voices were not as powerful and decisive as the old monks. She seemed not to hear it, and walked past the monks to the high platform. The long-browed old monk straightened his back. His shriveled body suddenly swelled up and tightened the scarlet kasaya. There were 3 monks on his left and right, all of them looking angry. The 7 great monk kings of the Big Wheel Temple were ready to strike. Their aura was like a prison or an ocean, rushing toward her. She acted as if she didn't hear any of this. Step by step, she walked to the front of the high platform. The battle was about to begin, but she walked around the side of the platform. From the beginning to the end, he did not even look at the long-browed old monk. Except for her. All the monks looked at the old monk. The veins on the old monk's forehead were popping out. He clenched his fists tightly, like a vajra glaring at them. He was about to protect them and subdue the demon. The moment she brushed past him, she suddenly deflated and sat back down on the platform. She came to the back of the hall and cut open a stone door with her sword, entering the deep underground palace. In the Hall of Great Strength, a monk king said, "Abbot, the enemies of the Buddha have invaded the relic palace. Quickly activate the rotation formation. How can you blaspheme the corporeal body relics of our predecessors?" The long-browed old monk retorted, "So what if we activate the formation?" For a moment, the crowd in the hall was stirred up. "We will fight the enemy of Buddha. We swear to live and die with Big Wheel Temple. Let her know that Big Wheel Temple is not a place where she can come and go as she pleases." The long-browed old monk said again, "We can fight with her, but what if Li Qingshan comes?" All the monks were silent. Most of them had not seen Li Qingshan with their own eyes, so they did not know much about the cause and effect of the battle on Mount Dragonhead. However, the ending of the Lingua Temple was known by everyone, and it shocked all the Buddhist disciples in the world. It rose from the mountain and crossed thousands of miles. It was thrown in front of Mount Dragonhead. Such power was unimaginable, making people lose the courage to fight against it. The long-browed old monk put his palms together and closed his eyes. "Let's leave it to fate." She had already come to the depths of the underground palace, right below the Hall of Great Strength. The belly of the mountain was hollowed out, and a 9-story building was built. Dried corpses were sitting there, and they were the corporeal body relics left by the previous eminent monks. Because they worshipped the Chakravarti Saint King, if they had no hope of ascending, they would reincarnate with a bit of their real spirits, so they kept a lot of corporeal body relics. She shook her hand, and the 3-burial robe floated up, wrapping around a dried corpse. She recited the 3-burial scripture, and lines of blasphemous scriptures flowed on the 3-burial robe. The eyes of the dried corpse blinked, and its skin turned from yellow to white. Its sunken cheeks gradually became rosy, and it looked no different from a living person. It stood up and knelt in front of her, putting its palms together. "Honored Master." The 3-burial robe, the living dead, flesh and bones, reincarnating the dead, and converting people to the path of bones. In a moment, the dried corpses stood up one after another. There were men and women among them, and regardless of their age and appearance when they died, they all returned to the appearance of their prime. All of them were youthful and full of vitality, and their eyes shone with a bright luster. They were different from the skeletal demons formed by the skull prayer beads, and the skeletal ghost king in the blood sea banner. They all had the power and wisdom of their previous lives, but they were converted by her and became her disciples. Those who could place the corporeal body relics here were all the eminent monks of the Big Wheel Temple. It could be said that if she walked out now, she could build a holy land of Buddhism that did not belong to the Lingua Temple. A monk stepped forward. "Honored Master, the current abbot of the Big Wheel Temple was originally my disciple. I'm willing to go up and discuss Dharma with him, so that he can break the cycle of reincarnation and convert to the sect. What if he doesn't obey? Then we can only grant him nirvana, and then ask the honored master to convert him. The eminent monks walked out of the underground palace, and not long after, the big wheel temple converted. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows slightly. Sometimes he really did not understand what this child was doing, and it made him sigh. The little and who had doubts and asked him for guidance on the path of bones was gone forever? What about little Ming? Gu Yenying said, he's trying to control the sky-climbing vine at the Dragon Head Mountain and let it communicate with the Azura path. Li Qingshan nodded, all he lacks is resources. If he succeeds, I'm afraid he'll be able to pass the fourth heavenly tribulation very soon. We can also follow this sky-climbing vine and go to the Azura path if we want to, the demonic beast path if we want to, and if we want to. His voice gradually slowed down, and an idea appeared in his mind, but it was erratic, vague, and difficult to grasp. He could not help but fall into deep thought. Suddenly, he had an idea. Wait, I have a good idea. If we succeed, we can not only save the world, but it will also be of great benefit to us. We can do what Chua Long wanted to do but failed to do. Gu Yenying's eyes flashed. You mean, let's go, we'll talk about it at the Dragon Head Mountain. The Kunpeng rose with the wind, and Gu Yenying said to Li Qingshan on her back, aren't your injuries all healed? Why don't you fly over yourself? The situation is so urgent, aren't you fast? As the saying goes, capable people do more work. Also, please be polite to the hero who is about to save the world. Li Qingshan spread his legs and stood on the Kunpeng's back like a thorn. Do you know that you can be really annoying sometimes? We've arrived at the Dragon Head Mountain. Hurry up and get off. Gu Yenying rolled her eyes, and the Kunpeng went around the sky-climbing vine that connected the sky and the earth, and slowly landed on the Dragon Head Mountain. To be continued. P.S. Those who voted are all good people. Great people. Chapter 4:15. Convert, save the world. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.